Kendall County Courthouse. Are there any objections?
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
With that, can I get announcements from the parties, beginning with the department?
Kelly Price for the department, along with representatives from Belong. We are ready to proceed. And then Christy and Ona, if you could announce yourselves.
Christy Knott, Permanency Supervisor with Belong.
Ona Powell, Permanency Specialist with Belong.
Kathleen Savage, attorney for the respondent mother, Tracy Bushman. We are ready. Ms. Bushman, if you can unmute and announce your name for the record.
Tracy Bushman.
Alana Pierso, attorney for the father, Corey Martin, who is present, and we are ready. Corey, please unmute and hold the opportunity.
Jennifer Harris, attorney ad litem for the children. I'm ready.
Children, Tri-County Casa.
Anna Swallow, attorney for the interveners, Tristan and Emily Ford. We're ready. Mr. and Mrs. Ford, if you could unmute and state your names, please.
Tristan Ford.
Emily Ford. Thank you.
Mr. Martin, can you please announce?
Corey Martin.
All right, can you turn on your video, please?
I will try to.
Anybody else that needs to announce while he's trying to do that? No. Okay. Anyone who's not an attorney?
Courtesy worker out of San Angelo.
Go ahead and say that again. I think I interrupted you.
Misty Martinez, the courtesy worker with the department out of San Angelo.
Matthew Schafer, previous family-based worker and removing worker.
Previous Belong Permanency Specialist for Ms. Bushman.
Your Honor, could you request that Mr. Martin mute again? It keeps, I'm having trouble hearing everyone.
I'm going to get him to mute well, Mr. Martin, go ahead and unmute because I need to swear everybody in first. And then I'll have everybody mute that doesn't need to be on. Is there anybody else that needs to announce?
Judge, I have several witnesses present. I don't know if you want them all to announce.
Are they going to be? Did we above the rule last time? Yes, we did. Let's go ahead and have them announce now because they're going to be removed from the courtroom.
Thank you. Ms. Rios, could you unmute and announce, please?
Hi, Rosemary Rios for United States Drug Testing Laboratories.
Thank you. And then there's also Marissa. I don't see you anymore.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Marissa Baldwin, speech language pathologist providing service to the children.
And Your Honor, for us, I have Melissa Potts and then Chelsea Ashton. Those might be the only two additional ones that haven't announced.
I'm Chelsea Ashton. I'm the clinical director at the Journey Recovery Center.
Thank you.
Program Director at the Alcohol Drug Awareness Center of the Concho Valley.
Ms. Swallow, you said that you wanted to continue your examination of Ms. Bushman, correct?
Yes, Judge. I was on. You just got to me for redirect.
Right. Okay. So we need to remove Ms. Ashton to the waiting room. Ms. Ferguson, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Brisbane, or no?
She is no, Judge. She's with Divinity for my clients.
Okay. I just didn't know if she was going to be called. Okay. So. Ms. Potts.
Actually, Your Honor, I might call Ms. Brisbane. So if we can put her in the waiting room.
Okay. All right. I'm sending a message to the waiting room participants to make sure they understand they're still subject to the rule. Okay. All right. Ms. Swallow, you may proceed with your redirected, Ms. Bushman.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Bushman, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And you understand that I represent Mr. and Mrs. Ford, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Bushman, can you tell me what medications the children are currently taking?
I do not know what medications are on.
Okay. And can you tell me what date you completed rehab?
April 5th.
Of what year?
2023.
And what is your sobriety date?
February 7th, 2023.
And have you alerted the San Angelo housing that to update your lease that your Jasmine and Jameson are not living with you?
I have tried to get a hold of them. I haven't been able to get a hold of them. I've left them multiple messages and emailed them. I haven't been able to get a hold of them now.
Okay. Is there a reason why you did not alert the housing authority in December?
Never told them.
Ms. Bushman, let me finish talking, please. Is there a reason why you did not alert the housing authority in December 2023 when the children were removed from you that the children would not be living with you if you were accepted into housing?
When I got my extension, I told them that the kids were not with me, that I was trying to get them back.
Okay. And how did you tell them that? In what form?
In person at the office when I was getting my extension.
Who did you speak with?
The caseworker that I had at the time. I don't remember her name.
Okay, that's fine. Ms. Bushman, were you living with Mr. Martin at the time that the children were removed in January 2023?
Yes.
Do you believe he was aware of this case?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any understanding as to why he did not make himself available?
He was working all the time.
When you had the children in a monitored return from October 2023 to December 2023, you took Jameson for a swallow study, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you take Jasmine too?
She had an appointment scheduled, but didn't make it to that appointment because they were moved before the appointment.
So yes or no, did you take Jasmine too?
No.
And the swallow study for Jameson, is it your understanding that the doctor told you to take him off the thickener based on that swallow study?
He was already off the thickener before the swallow study. The doctor, his primary doctor, told me that I could take him off the thickener.
Okay, so the primary doctor where you were taking the children when they were in your care, your testimony is that doctor advised you to take both the children off of the thickener.
She told me if they could drink water, that they could drink regular formula, that they shouldn't. That, and then so we were following up with the swallow study to make sure that everything was all right. That, you know, and if they needed to have, you know, thickened liquid, then they would have, we'd, you know, redo that then.
I don't understand what you're saying, but that's okay. Miss Bushman, do you understand that your children are silent aspirators?
Yes.
Do you understand what that means?
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
That they are inhaling their liquids instead of swallowing it all the way down.
Do you understand why the children need to be on thickener?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you understand why the children needed to be on thickener at the time that they were in your care from October 2023 to December 2023? It's a yes or no question.
Yes. Yes.
So you understood then, but you still chose to take them off of thickener.
The doctor told me that I could take him off the thickener.
Miss Bushman, I'm going to show you, Judge, am I able to screen share?
You are now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is your exhibit that your attorney admitted into evidence. It's exhibit number 3. I'm going to scroll down a bit. And I think, can you read the date of this appointment?
It just says April 24th, therapy notes. That's all it says on my end.
Okay, so you don't see me highlighting date of appointment there?
No, ma'am.
What we see right now is the file explorer box with the name of the file, exhibit 3, April 24th therapy notes.
Okay, it
If
is.
you have exploded it out, we don't see the exploded version. Now we can see it.
Great, thank you. Ms. Bushman, can you read the date of this appointment?
4/11/24.
Okay, and I'm going to scroll back up so you can see that this exhibit are therapy notes from your therapist, Ms. Boone, correct?
Right, yes.
Okay. Let me go back down to this. As part of your therapy, did you discuss the children's medical conditions?
Yes.
Okay, and can you read what is in quotes here?
They say they have chronic lung disease, but they don't have any breathing problems. They're not sick kids, but you can't tell. At first, they sounded congested and had breathing treatments.
Okay, and Ms. Bushman, is that something that you told Ms. Boone?
Yes.
Okay. Do you still believe that to be true?
I believe that their issues aren't as serious as everybody's trying to make them out to be. But I mean, I do understand the seriousness of them, but
okay,
they really don't have.
It was a yes or no question.
Sustained.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bushman. I pass the witness.
I guess we would go to Miss Harris at this point. Miss Harris? I think she's frozen. Oh, there she is. You're muted.
I'm sorry, Judge. I'm trying to get more stable internet.
Is it my redirect?
I believe so, unless I'm incorrect.
This is redirect.
I don't have any questions at this time.
So, okay, so she didn't have any cross. Okay, so then Ms. Savage, do you have any recross?
Yes, Ms. Bushman, you were giving us your opinion or your stance on your children's medical diagnosis. Can you let the court know what your position is with your kid's diagnosis?
My position is, I haven't seen them sick, so I don't really believe that they're as sick as everything's been put on. I mean, I haven't been able to go to the doctor's appointments. I haven't been able to, even when the doctor's appointments are set up, I haven't gotten information on when the doctor's appointments are, so I haven't been able to go to the doctor's appointments.
I'm going to object to non-responsive, Judge.
I'll ask another question. Ms. Bushman, have you asked the caseworker to be informed of the children's medical appointments?
Yes, ma'am. And every time that I do get information on when the doctor's appointment is, it either gets canceled or there's some other reason why, I can't go. But
Okay. And if the judge were to grant the transitional monitored return, would you be able and willing to give the children the medication as they have been prescribed?
Of course, yes.
Okay. And as you testified earlier, you didn't take the thickener off just on your own accord. That was under the advice of a doctor?
Yes, ma'am.
And you had taken the children, or you had at least taken Jameson to get another swallow study while he was placed with you for those 3 months. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you were, you had set up an appointment for Jasmine to have one, but the kids were removed before she was able to attend. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you had gotten Jameson started in speech therapy when he was placed with you. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you had taken the children to see their primary care doctor multiple times during the 3 months they were placed with you. Is that correct?
Judge, I'm going to object as cumulative and asked and answered. We've gone through all this testimony previously.
Sustained.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Price, I'm sorry I skipped you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Bushman, Ms. Swallow had asked you about reaching out to the housing to report your living status. Is there a reason why you were having to do that like right now, like more recently?
Yeah, because somebody reported me that the kids weren't staying with me.
And was it your understanding that housing was already aware of that fact?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you know that somebody reported that to them?
They sent me a letter in the mail saying that somebody reported me that
Judge,
the kids
I'm
weren't
objecting
staying
to
with me.
hearsay and speculation.
Your Honor,
Your
this will
Honor-
open the door, and this is not for the truth of the matter asserted, but to explain Ms. Bushman's recent actions for why she had to reach out to housing.
And I would also urge
All right,
that
one
it's
at a
not
time. One at a time, because neither me nor the reporter can take all this in. Ms. Price, what's your response?
It's not for the proof of, it's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted. Sorry, I can't speak this morning. Because it's not about whether someone actually reported her or not. It's actually to look at Ms. Bushman's actions, which Ms. Swallow had already asked her about.
Okay, in that case, I'll overrule the hearsay objection, but be careful with any answer that might be speculative. I think she has speculation objection as well. So go ahead and ask your question again, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Bushman, I had asked how you knew that someone had reported your living status to the housing authority. And I believe you were saying that you received a letter.
No. I received a letter in the mail saying that somebody had reported that the children weren't living with me.
And you said that during the time when the extension was granted, that you had made that fact known to the housing authority at that time?
Yes, ma'am. They had asked me how long I thought that the kids how long it would be before I got the kids back. And I told them that my caseworker had told me that it would be probably a couple of months, but now it's been like 7 months. So, but I did tell them that the kids were not staying with me, that I was trying to get them back.
Okay. And do you, not asking you to speculate, if you know, do you know who reported you?
I do not know.
Okay.
I have an idea, but I don't know.
No, I'm not asking for the speculation. Ms. Bushman, if the judge transitions the children to you, will you be asking Belong for all of the information regarding their medication?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you have any objections to when you get them scheduled and situated with medical personnel there in San Angelo that you could request that their records be sent over so that their new doctors can know all of their history?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I'll pass the witness at this time.
Ms. Pearsall?
Thank you, Honor. You would like today for Mr. Martin to continue to keep his parental rights so he's able to pay child support to you, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Are you seeking any other relief as far as Mr. Martin?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Is there anything else you would like the court to order as far as Mr. Martin?
No, ma'am.
No other questions?
Thank you. Ms. Harris?
Ma'am, you said that you would like the judge to order Mr. Martin to pay child support. Would you like for the judge to order any kind of visitation rates for him?
Any kind of what? I'm sorry.
You're really quiet.
Yeah.
It sounds
Sorry.
like she's underwater.
Would you like for the judge to order any visitation for him?
Not unless he goes to rehab or something like that first.
No other questions, Judge.
We've done a direct and a redirect and a cross and recross of Miss Bushman at this point in time. Anything else that we need to cover with her? Can we move on?
Judge, I would request to be able to call my next witness.
All right. Who is that?
Miss Rosemary Rios. Thank you. Miss Rios, my name is Anna Swallow. I represent Mr. Emily and Tristan Ford, the interveners in this case. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your full name for the record.
Rosemary Rios,
And Miss Rios, where do you currently work?
United States Drug Testing Laboratories in Des Plaines, Illinois.
And what is your occupation?
I am a forensic toxicologist, certifying department supervisor, and a CS3 scientist.
And what kind of business is the United States Drug Testing Laboratories?
We test biological samples for the presence of drugs of abuse or by alcohol biomarkers.
And is the drug testing lab where you work, is it accredited to do that type of work?
Yes, ma'am. We have plenty, or several, I should say, accreditations and certifications.
And how long have you been employed in this specific field?
As a matter of fact, today's my anniversary, 18 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What are your job functions in your position?
So I'm a certified department supervisor, and what that means at the same time, I am a certified scientist level 3. And what that entails is that our department is responsible for certifying all positive and negative confirmatory results. We review all immunoassay data, including the positive controls. We're responsible for reviewing that all of our quality control, quality assessments, data, and information is following criteria. And of course, we perform testimonies, build litigation packages, business record affidavits.
And Ms. Rios, are you a member of any professional associations?
Yes, I have several memberships. The main one is MAT, which is the Midwest Association of Therapeutic and Drug Toxicology. And the other one is the Society of Forensic Toxicology.
And can you please state your educational background?
Sure, I have a bachelor's degree in science with a concentration in chemistry.
And which organizations are you a member of?
The two that I mentioned.
Okay. And Judge, I would like to offer Ms. Rios as an expert in the field of forensic toxicology at this time.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Rios, I'm going to ask you specifically about a drug test, and I'm going to pull it up here quickly.
While you're doing that, just for the purpose of the record, court heard no objection. Ms. Rios has been designated as an expert. You're good.
Exhibit 18.
Okay, thank you. This is Interveners Exhibit 18. It's already been admitted into evidence. And could you read what I've highlighted here?
My laboratory, which is United States Drug Testing Labs.
Okay, and what does that indicate to you?
That the testing was performed at our location.
Okay, and how does your location identify certain samples?
Well, each sample is received with the chain of custody, also known as a requisition form, and on the requisition form and or chain of custody, it has to have the name of the facility that actually did the collection, that sent us the actual testing, the name of the individual, meaning the donor, the name, and of course of ours, the actual company sending it. Usually it's a social security ID, or it could be the medical review officer's assigned number. The chain of custody number is also used for identification. So we have several identification markers that we use that has to follow that sample.
Okay. And who was the donor in this specific test result?
So Tracy Bushman is the donor.
Okay. And what was the date the specimen was collected?
It was collected. Your form looks different than mine, so I have to look around. Date specimen collected was February 27, 2024.
Okay. And what type of specimen was this?
This was nails, and to be exact, fingernails.
Okay. And how do you know if it was fingernails or toenails?
That is one of the actual markers that are on the requisition form. It has to actually stipulate if it came from the fingers or if it came from the toes, because the toenails have a longer cutoff window than the fingernails. So we need to make sure that the time that we're telling you that we can specify that the individual was positive and or negative has to be noted.
Okay. And so if this specimen was fingernails and it's collected February 27th, 2024, and your expert opinion, how far back in time is that window?
So because it's fingernails, it's 4 to 6 months. Now that's approximate. That's why we give you 4 to 6 month window.
Okay. And I'm going to scroll down a bit. And could you read to me what your interpretation is of the test results?
So we performed a 5-panel nail stat drug test. And what that means is we performed it to look into 5 different drug classes. Drug class would be the amphetamine drug class, the cocaine drug class, the marijuana drug class, the opiates drug class, and the PCP. During the testing that we performed, we determined that the individual's test was positive for the amphetamine drug class and that it was positive for the methamphetamine.
Okay. And so what does that mean to you as an expert?
So because it was only tested positive for the methamphetamine, not their metabolite, it tells us that it was environmental exposure.
And could you explain to the court what that means?
Sure. So when an individual ingests actual methamphetamine, which is the actual drug, when they ingest it, the drug goes into the system, and of course, just like everything else, it gets metabolized through the blood, the liver, whatever it is, depending on what the drug is. And what comes out is the metabolite. So the metabolite in this case for methamphetamine would be amphetamine. Now, because the amphetamine is not present in the actual test sample, that tells me that it was not ingested. Now, because we only find methamphetamine, which is the actual drug, that tells us that the individual may have been in an environment where they were exposed to the drug.
And based off of your testimony, that would have been 4 to 6 months prior to February 27th, 2024.
Not prior to, but in that window. And the window, so it could have been from month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, month 6. We just give you that window, sometime in that window.
Okay. So if this individual is claiming a sobriety date of February 7th, 2023, that's somewhat inconsistent in your opinion.
February 7th, 2023, this test.
Your Honor, she just testified that it's not ingestion. So that would support a sober date.
Well, I'll let you clear that up on cross. I want to hear her answer to this question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
If I'm going to strike my question, I'm going to ask you another question.
Okay.
Ms. Rios, what is the cutoff for the metabolite?
So for the metabolite, our confirmation cutoff is 100.
Is it possible that this individual ingested methamphetamines? However, the test was not able to detect the metabolite because it did not meet the cutoff level.
That's possible, yes.
Okay,
I can't say yes or no that it is. I can't say that it's possible that it was below our detection window of 100.
So we cannot completely rule out that this positive test was not a result of actual ingestion.
Correct.
As far as the environmental exposure that you're testifying to, would that be just a one-time exposure? How does that occur?
It's unlikely because we set our confirmation cutoff levels and our screen cutoff levels so that at a level that we can eliminate all the noise. And by that, I mean, so that we can eliminate, like a single exposure for the individual that, let's say they went shopping or they were in a room where an individual was smoking or something, and it was just a one-time exposure. We don't want to get those lower ones because we want to remove the possibility of just an innocent exposure. So our confirmation cutoff is set at a level so that if anything that's going to be detected above our 100, it would unlikely be due to just one exposure. It would have to be consistent exposures. And I can't tell you how many would be considered consistent because one individual can say, well, they could be in a room where it was like 100 people smoking methamphetamine, and the concentration was so strong that it triggered a one-time exposure. Or it could be several times over amount of time that it was actually exposed. So highly unlikely, or I should just plainly say unlikely, that one exposure would trigger a positive result.
Okay. And the exposure, what types of exposure? I've heard you say smoked. What other types of exposure would explain this positive test?
So the other ways that we would actually determine would probably if the individual is in a room. So you remember, if anything is in the air and the individual touches some contaminated surface, and then it can get soaked into their fingernails through the actual skin around the fingernails. So if it's being manufactured in a room, if it's being distributed in the room, if it's being smoked in a room, that can cause environmental exposure.
Okay. If someone says that they had moved furniture, would that furniture that was in an environment with where methamphetamines were smoked or used or manufactured or handled, would that explain this positive result?
Again, it would have to be a consistent exposure, and how much would have to be on that sofa, mattress, whatever the case may be. I would assume that the concentration, and that's an assumption because of course, you have to be there and know the actual concentration by testing the actual item. But if it's consistent, and I have to make sure I keep specifying that it has to be in a consistent exposure, not just a one time of carrying a sofa.
Does when methamphetamine is on a surface, does it degrade over time?
Yes, just like all drugs, the air can cause it to degrade. Sure.
Okay. So what is it that this test indicates to you?
The only thing that I can specify to this test that the individual was positive for environmental exposure to methamphetamine.
Okay. And that is it reasonable to conclude that she was somewhere she was not supposed to be?
In my
Objection, Your Honor, that
opinion,
calls for speculation.
I share that objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. Let's reword that one, Ms. Swallow.
That's okay. I pass the witness.
All right, Ms. Price.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Rios, or is it Dr. Rios?
Just Ms. Rios.
Ms. Rios. Can a person have environmental exposure repeatedly and not know it? Is that possible?
That's another assumption. I would assume yes, if it has no odor and they don't see any smoke or. So you're asking a big assumption question.
Well, and I guess let me maybe make it a little bit more. So if somebody had environmental exposure from a surface, could there be repeated exposure and the person not know that it was on the surface, that they were being repeatedly exposed to it?
I can only assume so. Yes, that can possibly happen.
Okay. And if the donor in this particular case, if they have been regularly submitting to drug test since that positive result through both hair and urine analysis, and those have all been negative, would that support a conclusion that there has been no environmental exposure since that window that you discussed earlier?
No, that is not at all true. You have to remember that all matrices have their own window, their own detection time, their own cutoffs. There's too many variables. One thing that we have to specify that one test, even if it's from the same fingernails, the same hand, different fingers, one test, one collection does not refute the results of another collection. So they all stand on their own merits because there's so many different variables that can go on: the cutoffs, the detection time, the matrix. I mean, you're comparing a urine test to a hair where a urine is only 2 or 3 days exposure. You're comparing fingernails to hair, where hair is only a 3-month exposure. So, and then the nails are 4 to 6 months. So when that hair was it collected during the first 3 months of the nail or after? You know what I'm saying? Was it collected from what part of the head? Every part of the head has a different concentration. You know, the vertex has one concentration here, the back of the, so it's like, no, we can't answer that. They're totally different detection times and windows.
Okay, and so if nevertheless, the person who, the donor in this case, if every subsequent drug test since the positive one that you were just looking at had been negative, the most that this can tell us is that there was environmental exposure in that window. We don't have any other evidence to the contrary with all subsequent negative tests.
No, all we can tell you is in the time frame of the collection of said sample, meaning this one is a fingernail from February 27th, that 6 months prior, 4 to 6 months, 4 to 6 months prior to that collection, the individual was exposed to methamphetamine.
And in the environment?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Savage.
Yes, Ms. Rios. So if a hair test taken on or about that same time as the nail test was negative, would that support possibly that the exposure in the fingernails was based off surface and not necessarily smoke?
No, because they both have the same consideration for environmental exposure. If you're comparing two different collections. Again, one does not refute the results of another, nor does it cooperate with the other one. So they stand alone. So hairs are 3 months, and also environmental exposure. The same rules obtained, that we get the environmental exposure to nails also pertains to the hair. Environmental exposure can be all those different things. Again, let's say the individual is touching the surface and then they touch their hair. It transfers to their hair. So it's going to get absorbed and it's going to get bathed and soaked into the hair follicles. Same thing with the fingernails. If the individual's in an environment where, as you say, touch the surface, it's going to soak into the nails because it's going to be on the hands. And as we all know that we have sweat and oil on our hands, that sweat and oil, if it contains any drug and or drug metabolite, because individual can also get the drug and drug metabolite if they touch another individual, or another individual that's actually positive for methamphetamine and actual amphetamine, they can transfer it to the other individual. So it can be transferred person to person. But all we can tell you is that it's environmental exposure. How the environment exposed the individual would have to be determined by the court system. We can't tell you because we weren't there.
Perfect. So as you were testifying, being around somebody could possibly be transferred based off of that person's clothing or anything that they might be wearing if they're actively using.
No, not their clothing. No, I said the hands, the sweat.
Okay, the hands.
Yes, ma'am.
So if they like shook hands and introduced each other, maybe at like an AANA meeting?
No, not just by simply that you're talking about one-time exposure, and that exposure better have some really good concentration to detect or cause a reaction above our cutoff. Again, like I told Anna, it would have to be consistent exposure. And by shaking hands one time individual, no, we're talking about usually when it comes to environmental exposure from one individual to the other, that's compared to or used in the situation when it's a child. You know how children are held by their caregiver, parent, whoever it is. And if they are actual drug users and they're positive for the drug, and they would have to have the metabolite as well, that would be considered environmental exposure or incidental exposure, whatever you want to call it, because it got transferred to the child from hugging and caring for. So that would be considered consistent exposure.
Okay, so like if the donor in this case was living in a sober living home and was sharing close residences with other, addicts in recovery, that could also result in her being continuously exposed to someone who might have relapsed, correct?
If she's constantly being hugged and touched, that's a big leap. But yeah, I can't answer that. They would have not just living in an environment. No, you can't get it just by me and you being in the same room. It's not like germs being transferred in the air or anything like that. We're talking about actual contact, consistent touch by the hand. The skin and the oil and all that, the sweat, I'm sorry, would have to be transferred. But no, not an individual just living in an apartment, building, house, whatever the case may be.
So in your, I'll pass the witness. Oh, but actually what you can tell us definitively is that this only tells us that Tracy was exposed to somebody or some surface that had meth residue on it.
So what I can tell you from the test results, not definitively or any other kind of opinion, what I can only tell you is that according to the results, it's environmental exposure. That's all I can say. Sample is positive, and because of the concentration levels and because there's no metabolite, we can only say environmental exposure causes.
Pass witness, Your Honor.
Before you ask any questions, Ms. Pearsall, Ms. Rios, can you give the court your operational definition of environmental exposure, please?
Sure. So environmental exposure can occur if an individual is in a room where the drug is being smoked. And I'm talking about there's several drugs that are smoked. So let's say this drug is being smoked. The individual can be exposed to if they're in a room consistently. Let's make sure that we specify that. Consistently in a room where the drug is being manufactured, where the drug is being distributed, due to contamination of touching, consistently touching an environmental object, or whatever the case may be. But the magic word is we have to specify that it's consistent exposure. And yes, if an individual, but this one in particular pertains to children, is constantly being carried, touched, exposed to the sweat and oil of another individual's hands. It can also transfer to the hair. It can transfer to the nails, but not to such a concentration degree as much as the hair, because as you know, the hair is more porous. So those are different ways that environmental exposure can occur.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Ms. Pearsall?
No questions.
Ms. Harris?
No questions, Judge.
Any redirects?
No, Judge.
Anybody have any other questions for Ms. Rios? May this witness be excused.
Yes, thank you, Judge.
Ms. Rios, thank you for your time and your testimony today. You are free to go. And
Thank
I'll
you.
remove now. Thank you. Next witness.
Judge, I would like to call Marissa Baldwin. She is with River Kids Pediatric Home Health. She is the children's speech therapist. Miss Baldwin, my name is Anna Swallow. I represent Emily and Tristan Ford. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Marissa Baldwin.
Miss Baldwin, how are you associated with this case?
I am a speech language pathologist providing service to the children.
And how long have you been providing services to the children?
For about a year, with a small break when they were returned to the biological mother last year.
And what type of services do you provide?
I provide feeding therapy.
And what does that mean?
So both Jasmine and Jameson have oropharyngeal dysphagia. And so they have dysfunction and disorganization of their ability to swallow food and liquid. And so my services are to try and habilitate that skill.
And what is your training, Ms. Baldwin?
I have a master's degree in speech language pathology. And I have extensive post-grad training in pediatric feeding disorders.
Okay, and you described the children's diagnoses. Could you, how are you able to conclude that that is their diagnoses?
So both children have had repeated modified barium swallow studies, and those were not completed by me, but those were completed at, I think at San Antonio Children's Hospital. And so with both of those, they swallowed under fluoroscopy. And so the clinician that did those was able to see x-ray of how they were swallowing, where food and liquid was traveling, what sort of dysfunction they observed. And so in reading those reports, I was able to see that they were aspirating. And then also my own evaluation, watching them kind of externally with how they manipulate food and liquid.
Okay, and what is the benefit of a swallow study?
So a swallow study lets you see exactly where food and liquid is going whenever it's being swallowed. With both Jasmine and Jameson, they have what's called silent aspiration. And so food and liquid will go into their airway. It's silent in that for you or I, if we were to swallow and it were to go into our airway, we would have a response where we would cough. We would have like physical symptoms. For both of them, they don't do that. And so you're not able to tell just by looking at them that food or liquid is going into their airway.
And what is the harm if food or liquid silently goes into their airway?
Pneumonia, chronic lung disease, repeated upper respiratory infections.
Okay. And are you aware if these children have any of those, have had diagnosed with chronic lung disease, have repeated respiratory issues, or anything of the like?
Yes, both. I know that I believe they're both diagnosed with chronic lung disease, and they have had repeated upper respiratory infections.
Okay. And how often do these swallow studies need to be completed?
It can depend on the child, typically every 6 months, unless there are clinical concerns that one needs to be done sooner.
Okay. Specifically, talking about Jameson, is he currently on thickener?
Yes.
And why would he need to be on thickener?
So when you have a thin liquid, it moves more quickly. And so for Jameson, there is some dysfunction and some disorganization to how quickly his muscles are moving to get his airway protected when he swallows. And so by adding thickener to the liquid, you slow down. The liquid is more viscous, so it moves more slowly and gives his body more time to do what it needs to do to protect his airway.
And how do you know that the thickener is working?
Reduced upper respiratory infections.
Okay. And during the swallow study, are there events or opportunities to have the child swallow with thickener to see that they are not aspirating at that point in time?
Yes, that would typically be done during a swallow study.
Okay. And did that happen with Jameson's swallow study?
It did in the report that I read.
Okay. And so what about Jasmine? Is she under the orders for thickener at this time?
Yes.
And is it for the same reasons?
Yes.
And are they both being prescribed the same consistency for thickeners at this time?
At this time, yes.
And remind me how often you see the children?
I see them 2 times a week.
Okay. And what is the significance of 2 times a week?
So for both of them, we recently started what's called neuromuscular electrical stimulation with a device called VitalStim. And so I am placing electrodes on their throat that provide neuromuscular electrical stimulation to cause muscle contractions to both strengthen the muscles and increase the organization of those muscles. And so by doing that twice a week, there's more effectiveness for that to work. And then also the opportunity for me to monitor how they're doing, especially we're trying to reduce the amount of thickener that they're using. And so by slowly weaning the amount, I need to be in there quite frequently to make sure that they're safe with the current thickness.
And how long have you been doing this stimulation on these muscles here?
We've only been doing that for a couple of weeks. I think only 3 sessions.
Can you see a difference yet?
I can.
Okay, and what is the difference?
So again, they're both silent aspirators. So I am not always completely confident of exactly where the liquids are going, but there are some things that we can look at. One is just their respiratory rate and how quickly they're breathing. If there's increased work of breathing, that typically means that some of that liquid might be going into their airway. And then also listening to their vocal quality. So if they sound wet or congested, that's a pretty good indicator that food or liquid might be ending up in their airway.
And do you know why this condition occurs?
I don't. I mean, it can occur for various reasons. They were both premature, so sometimes that comes with prematurity. Sometimes it just comes with reduced sensation to those areas in the throat, and sometimes it can be neurological. For Jasmine and Jameson, I can't say for certain the cause of the dysphagia.
And your testimony was that you've been seeing them, except for the time period that they were with their mother, I guess, October 2023 to December 2023. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And if they did not receive any, are you aware of whether or not they received any sort of speech therapy during that time period?
If they were, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. And when did you start seeing them again?
I started seeing them, I believe, in March.
Okay. That break in care, that break in not seeing a speech therapist as yourself, in your opinion, did that have a negative effect on the children's progress?
It could have. It's hard to know just with development what might have been there on its own and what wouldn't have been. When I was seeing them before they were returned, we were working on weaning the amount of thickener, and they were doing really well with that. When I started seeing them again in March, we had to back to the full thickness and kind of start that process over again.
Right. And at this point, where are you at as far as the thickener goes?
We have done a 20% overall reduction.
So explain to me what you mean, 20% reduction from starting over again in March?
Correct. So I believe they were both on what's called honey thick. And so for the type of thickener they were using, it would be a certain amount of scoops per ounce of water. And so we're doing an evidence-based thickener reduction. And so with that, we're doing a 10% reduction every 2 weeks, provided there's no worsening of their condition or any illnesses, then we continue with another 10% reduction. They had a couple of ear infections and times that they were sick. And so we kind of slowed down on doing that. So at this point, we're at a 20% reduction with where we started.
Okay. At this point in time, I have a question for you in regards to the swallow study. It's Exhibit 20. It's already been admitted into evidence. And Judge, I can pull it up or I can just read it to her.
I don't have a problem with you reading it unless somebody else wants to see it. All right, go ahead.
Ms. Baldwin, what is flash penetration?
So penetration is where food or liquid enters the airway briefly, but then is cleared. So flash penetration would be a really brief moment of food or liquid getting to the point of the vocal folds, but then backing out and not going into the airway.
Okay, so it's not an aspiration.
Correct.
Okay. However, both of these children have aspiration. I guess aspiration is a step beyond that flash penetration.
Yes.
Okay. How long do you plan on providing speech therapy to these children?
My authorization is for 6 months. At that time, if they're still requiring services, we will do a re-eval and ask for an additional 6 months. At this point, I don't see them being able to be discharged within the next couple of months. So we would be seeing at least another 9 months.
And would it be the swallow study that determines that, or you that determines that, or a combination that determines that?
A combination.
I'm sorry.
Yes, it would be a combination. Their last swallow study, I believe, was in January. And so they are coming due for time to go get another one and kind of see how we've progressed. But my recommendations will include information from the swallow study, but it would be my report that would be submitted to insurance to ask for additional treatment.
Is continuity of care important?
Yes.
And can you explain why? Specifically as to these children?
Mm-hmm. So specifically when you're looking at something like silent aspiration, You want a professional in there frequently to assess if there are any changes. And if you are wanting to do a reduction of thickener, they need to be seen frequently to make sure that their bodies are handling that reduction and they're not at risk for aspiration.
So if we have a silent, these children are silent aspirators, and a doctor just does a quick medical review of the children and decides that they can be taken off thickener, in your opinion, there would need to be more of a deeper assessment than that?
Yes, thickener recommendations are typically for speech pathologists to make.
Okay, thank you. I pass the witness.
Ms. Price.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Baldwin, my name is Kelly Price. I'm the attorney for the department. It's nice to meet you. I just have a couple of questions. As a speech pathologist, are you aware of other speech language pathology services like in other areas of the state? Like, are you a part of any professional organizations that would give you knowledge about what might be available in other parts of the state?
I mean, I think it would just be like a Google search to see what's available.
Do you have any reason to, of course you said the G word and my phone started popping up. Do you have any reason to believe that the city of San Angelo would have no speech language pathology services?
No.
Speculation, Judge. She just said she would
Your
have to.
Honor, she's an expert.
I didn't try to qualify her as expert. Number one. Number two, she just said you'd have to do a Google search.
And her opinion?
I think the question should be rephrased the same.
Okay, Your Honor. Thank you. For a city the size of San Angelo, is there anything to suggest to you in your professional capacity that there would be no speech language pathology services available in a city of that size?
Speculation, Judge. A size of a city does not indicate whether or not there would be a speech language pathologist available. She's asking this witness to commit to something that she's already stated the individual would have to do a Google search.
Well, I think she's trying to be as specific as she can. I'm not sure how else she could get there. And I think you can clean it up for your purposes on redirect. So I'll overrule and allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So I know for my company, we have like various branches across the state. San Angelo is not one that my company serves, but it is possible that there are other speech pathologists in that area.
And Ms. Baldwin, if the children were to be returned to their biological mother over the course of a several-week transition period, looking at a 4 to 6 week period, would that be sufficient time for a referral to be made to a speech language pathologist in the area where they're living?
For a referral to be made, probably. I don't know if there would be wait lists or availability.
Right, certainly. And if they were able to be set up with services with a speech language pathologist in that area in a 4 to 6 week period, would you have any issues with making sure that new provider had all of their records and history?
Of course.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you would not have an issue with that?
Right.
Okay. Would that be a standard practice for you to send those records if they were switching providers?
Not me personally. That would be up to our medical records department, and it would need to come with a request from that new provider.
Okay.
Or provided by the primary care physician.
Okay, perfect. And if the children were to be set up with a provider to have that transfer as seamlessly as possible, could that be done so that they are not exhibiting setbacks in their progression?
I mean, it's difficult to say that with certainty. With the way authorizations work, if they were to seek a new authorization with a different provider, Superior would require that our authorization be nullified.
And what steps could be taken to kind of make sure that transfer could be as seamless as possible?
Well, you would need to find a provider that also is trained and qualified in neuromuscular electrical stimulation to make sure that that could continue with a new provider. And then, like I said, that provider requesting records. And then I would also be available to discuss their case with them with the proper paperwork signed for me to be able to discuss.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Your Honor,
Thank
I
you.
pass the witness.
Savage.
Ms. Baldwin, I'm gonna try to ask you to make this as simple for me, because sometimes I'm a very simple girl. So how do you help children who have swallow issues? I'm assuming it's through the thickener.
Through the thickener, and then also through oral motor intervention. So working with them on placement, on the ability to move their tongue, their lips, jaw strength, environmental setup, making sure that the food is presented in a way that's as safe as possible. And then also through things like the vital stim therapy, which is providing that external stimulation for muscle strengthening.
Okay. And so as you're providing these therapies, the idea, as you're doing now, is to reduce that thickener amount until they're able to finally be completely off.
Right. That would be the end goal.
Okay. And as you testified, your position on like where to start the thickener and what therapies to start is all based off of that initial swallow study that you receive and you review, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what recommendations would you make if you see flash penetration but no aspiration?
You would have to look at a lot of the other circumstances. A swallow study is just capturing one moment in time. And so if there's just flash penetration, but this is a kid that's high risk, that's having repeated upper respiratory infections, that's had a history of pneumonia, it's likely that aspiration is occurring, but it just wasn't captured at that moment. So you would have to look at a lot of different circumstances to make a treatment plan if you're just seeing flash penetration.
Okay. Based on that, though, would you start a thickener amount at a lower level if you're just seeing flash penetration?
Yes.
Okay. Were you aware that Jameson had a swallow study in December that showed no aspiration?
Maybe in December. I know that they've had a couple, so I'm not sure which one showed flash penetration, which one showed aspiration.
Were you able to review that one in your
Yes,
development?
I've reviewed both of the ones that they've had.
Okay. And so is it common for, some medical professionals to have differing opinions on treatment plans for children and with these type of situations?
Possibly.
Okay. And so while one doctor might recommend something else, another one could recommend something very different.
There could be.
Okay. And again, that's all based on the swallow studies that doctors are reviewing in that moment in time.
Right.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Pearsall.
No questions.
Ms. Harris.
What does it mean in the future for the children if they're not receiving appropriate speech therapy?
It could mean that they're not able to get off thickener, or if they're not having thickened liquids, it could mean repeated upper respiratory infections, aspiration, pneumonia, choking.
Is this something they outgrow without treatment?
Likely not.
No further questions, Judge.
Okay. Did you have any redirect?
No, Judge.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions for Ms. Baldwin?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused.
Yes, Judge. Thank you, Ms. Baldwin.
Thank you, Ms. Baldwin. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time and your testimony. You are free to go and I'll move you down. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day. Next witness.
Judge, I'd like to call Matt Schafer.
Mr. Schafer, you are under oath. And Ms. Swallow, you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Schafer, my name is Anna Swallow. I represent Emily and Tristan Ford, interveners in this case. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
And we've worked together previously, have we not?
Yes, we have.
But we have not worked together on this case, have we?
No, we have not.
How are you employed, Mr. Schafer?
With the Texas Department of Family Protective Services.
And what is your title?
Senior Advanced Specialist, Family-Based Safety Specialist.
And how are you associated with this case?
I was the previous family-based worker and the removing worker.
Do you know the dates you were involved with this case?
Yes, I do, roughly.
Can you tell me?
Yes. Family-based got involved, I believe, around December 5th of 2022. And I was involved until Team C was granted on January 5th of 2023.
So approximately a month?
Roughly, yes.
And how long have you been employed by the Department of Family Protective Services?
Going on 12 years now.
Okay. And so you're familiar with the policies and procedures and how these cases work?
Yes.
And were you the worker who ultimately conducted the removal of the children from Ms. Bushman?
Yes.
Were you, what was the main concern in this case?
The department got involved due to some concerns in regards to drug use in regards to Ms. Bushman, the allegations of drug use, and the children being exposed to prenatal drug use and also testing positive during the meconiums at birth.
Okay. So if I heard you correctly, you said their meconium was positive at birth.
Yes.
And Ms. Bushman, she was positive at the time at the hospital at their birth?
As I remember the case records from investigations, yes, I believe her urine analysis was positive.
And if the UA was positive, what does that indicate to you?
That there's some sort of current drug use occurring at the time.
Okay. And if the children's meconium was positive for methamphetamines, what does that indicate to you?
Well, no doctor, but majority of the time it means that there's been exposure to drug use over a period of time.
Okay. Have you ever had any contact with Mr. Corey Martin?
I have not.
Have you ever tried to get in contact with Mr. Martin?
Yes, I have.
How many times would you say that you attempted to get in contact with Mr. Martin?
At least 6 to 7 different times via text, phone call, voicemail, and email.
Do you believe that he was aware of this case?
I believe he was.
Why do you think he was aware of this case?
To my knowledge, I believe that, well, I do recall when I was speaking with Ms. Bushman at the time that I had the case, that she also stated that Mr. Martin was aware of the case being involved, with the department being involved with them. But unfortunately, she didn't have any sway or pull to try to get him to cooperate, but did provide me with the initial contact number to start allowing me to initiate communication.
And when you were in contact with Ms. Bushman, was she at the hospital or was she already back home?
She was already residing at the residence.
And who else was residing at that residence?
I know Ms. Bushman was. I can't recall the individual's name that she was residing to, which was a friend of hers that opened the residence for her to reside there with her and her children. I do know that Ms. Bushman had stated that Mr. Martin was residing there as well.
Okay. Did you ever see any evidence that Mr. Martin resided there?
I believe I saw some clothing. Other than that, there was nothing more.
Did you ever have any conversations with Ms. Bushman regarding drug use with Mr. Martin?
I cannot recall fully at this time if there was.
Did you ever have any conversations with Ms. Bushman regarding drug use of Mr. Martin?
Again, I can't recall if I did or didn't.
When you received the case, was there a safety plan in place?
Yes, there was.
Can you explain the goal of safety plan?
I I
Okay.
stand corrected. No, there wasn't a form of a safety plan in place at the time. I'm the one that initiated the safety plan.
And can you explain the goal of the safety plan?
It's to ensure child safety and mitigate the risk of any safety concerns reappearing in the midst of families working with us.
Okay. Is there usually immediate danger to a child when a safety plan is put into place? And in this
Yes,
case,
ma'am.
do you recall why you initiated a safety plan?
Yes, ma'am. I initiated the safety plan due to obtaining new drug use concerns that were revealed through testing and needing, and Ms. Bushman being the ultimate primary caregiver to the children at the time that the drug use was present.
So the children tested positive at birth in their meconium. Mom tested positive at birth in her UA, but the children were still returned to her from the hospital.
Yes, ma'am.
And no safety plan was in place.
No, ma'am. Not
And
that I recall.
following, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Not that I recall, ma'am.
And following the return of the children, or the children coming home to the mother from the hospital, it's your testimony, if I'm understanding correctly, that she then tested positive again?
Yes, ma'am.
And what type of test was that?
An oral mouse lab test,
And what was it positive for?
methamphetamines.
Okay. Did she make any admissions to you that she was using meth?
Yes, she did.
Do you recall how many times she admitted to you that she was using meth?
Yes. I believe 2 to 3 times in addition to the initial drug test concern
was-
with the, go ahead.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I was just saying is at least 2 to 3 more times after the initial drug test results were revealed from the lab test.
And that was within that 1 month time period.
Yes, ma'am.
And did you ever know Ms. Bushman to not be honest with you?
No, she was always honest when I confronted her, asked her about the drug use.
And so do you recall what the safety plan entailed?
Yes, that Ms. Bushman was to be supervised at all times by the supervisor that lived in the home. And again, I do not recall her name, but regardless, all contact between Ms. Bushman and the children were to be supervised at all times.
Did you ever drug test that individual that was to be the safety person?
No, there was nothing brought up as a concern, or we were never given any informal information to indicate that there was any drug use with her.
Was the living environment clean?
Yeah, for the most part. There wasn't nothing too concerning. If there was, things were addressed with Ms. Bushman on the spot.
Okay. How long was that safety plan, if you recall?
I think it was implemented up to maybe just 2 weeks until the department intervened. It wasn't very long.
What happened at the time the department intervened?
I gained knowledge that the safety plan was being broken. Ms. Bushman was not being supervised correctly or efficiently. Ms. Bushman had left the residence. The safety plan supervisor had no recollection of that occurring. Her door was shut. There was honestly no adequate supervision at all times with the between Ms. Bushman and the children.
What time of day was that the mom left the twins?
To my recollection, I believe it was late in the evening, very late, maybe between 11 p.m. to 12 a.m., I believe, or 10 p.m. to 12 a.m.
And how did you become aware of that?
I followed up with Ms. Bushman during the home visit, and through discussion of hearing admittance, she admitted to leaving the home during a certain period of time to use the drug use, and stated that the safety plan person had no idea that she had left nor came back.
Did you refer mom for any services?
Yes, ma'am. She was, I believe the MTP instructed her, was ordered to engage in a drug and alcohol assessment, random drug testing, individual counseling,
Mr. Schafer, we're only getting about every other syllable, so I'm going to give you permission to turn off your video so that we can use some of that bandwidth for your voice. And Ms. Swallow, could you please re-ask your last question so he can answer it?
Yes, Judge, thank you. Mr. Schafer, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you do the same?
Yes, you sound a lot better, actually.
Okay.
Could you please explain to the court what services the department asked mom to complete when the MTP was granted?
Yes, she was ordered to participate in a drug alcohol assessment and follow recommendations, random drug testing, and individual counseling / parenting incorporated within the individual counseling.
Okay, and are you aware if she completed the OSAR?
Yes, she did. Initially, she tried to complete it on, I believe, the middle of December, around the 15th or the 16th. But I do recall that she notified me that the phone had died and it got rescheduled to January 4th. And it wasn't until January 4th that she successfully completed her OSAR.
Do you believe that she was honest on the assessment?
She was not.
Could you
fully.
can you explain why you're stating that?
Yes. When I went to confront or follow up on the 4th after her drug and alcohol assessment, she did admit to using the night previously, which would have been January 3rd. And she advised me that she did not make the person conducting the assessment aware of that use. So therefore, there was not complete honesty in the assessment.
Do you believe that that affects the results of the assessment?
Yes, it does. If they're not clear and precise and honest during the assessment, they can't be thoroughly assessed correctly.
Did mom ever admit to you that she used in the home when the children were there?
Yes. Not in the residence that she's residing, but did admit to using in a residence where the children were present.
Do you believe that Ms. Bushman ever minimized the use of meth and the effects it had on her children?
I would say yes.
And why do you say yes?
We had numerous conversations about the effect it can have on the case, what could happen to her children if drug use continued. We talked about some triggers and coping skills or triggers that were impacting her life that resulted to reasoning behind use. And again, as we continue to discuss this and the severity and the importance of it, it didn't seem as if it was taken fully seriously by Ms. Bushman.
And did she ever indicate to you that she just needed to use meth to help her stay awake?
Yes, she did.
Could you explain to me that situation?
Yes, it was just, again, during the time that I was having a visit with her and addressing some of the drug use and getting her set up in services, reasoning that she had chose she's overly tired and she needed a boost to keep her awake to continue to care for both young children during that time that she had them, just to stay awake, and because it was a lot of stress on her.
Do you believe that Mr. Martin helped her at all during that time period with the children?
I can't say that I know for sure. I would hope that he did, but I don't have any facts to support that.
As part of your role, and also in drafting your affidavit for the actual removal of the children, did you not conduct a due diligence search in regards to Ms. Bushman's, Mr. Martin's CPS history?
Yes, I remember recalling some of the previous CPS history.
Okay, what's your understanding of Ms. Bushman's prior CPS history?
That she has had a few other children removed in the instance of substance use concerns and not being able to fully obtain them back in her custody.
Do you know why she was not able to achieve reunification in those prior cases?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know fully.
Were any of those children also Mr. Martin's?
I cannot recall if that was a true fact.
Okay. Are you aware of whether or not Ms. Bushman has a history of meth use prior to this case?
Yes, I was made aware of that.
Okay. Are you aware of whether or not Ms. Bushman has been found reason to believe for any of prior children?
Yes, I do remember seeing something about previous cases where it was validated for reason to believe, and I believe the children were placed into foster care at that time as well.
Okay, but you don't know how many children,
Not off the top of my head, ma'am.
and you don't know from what time period CPS initially got involved in her life.
I could, if I could refer back to the affidavit, I'm pretty sure I could come up with some of the dates.
Do you have a copy of the affidavit?
I can, yes, I actually have that pulled up.
Judge, may he be given
So, yes.
permission to refresh his memory off his affidavit?
Provided it's the same affidavit everybody else has, that's fine.
Yes, Your Honor, it is.
We may proceed then.
And are you able now to testify as to when the department became initially involved with Ms. Bushman?
Yes, I see that I notated on the affidavit. It was May 19th of 2005.
Okay, and what child was that involving?
I see that there's allegations of physical abuse of John.
Okay, and what ultimately happened in that case?
According to the CPS history, that it was reported that a 2-year-old had some sort of a fracture in the skull, but there's conflicting stories as to what happened, but ultimately allegations were ruled out and the case was closed at that time.
Okay. Do you know if Ms. Bushman ultimately achieved, at that time, the allegations were ruled out? Was there another case subsequently opened as to Ms.
Yes.
Bushman? And what was that?
Yes, ma'am. It was November 9th. I'm sorry, November 9th of 2005.
And what were those allegations?
There were also there's allegations of physical abuse of Anthony by Mr. Ryan and Ms. Bushman.
Okay. And were there other children involved in that referral?
Mr. Schafer,
Yeah.
having some more connectivity issues.
Thank you. Mr. Schafer, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Okay, so looking at you were discussing when the department got involved yet again with November 9th, 2005, correct?
Yes.
And were there other children involved in that referral?
Yes, there was a Miss Kyla Ann and a Matthew Thomas.
Okay, and what were the allegations?
There was concerns of Mr. Ryan was arrested due to abusing gasoline in the home by smelling and huffing it. There's also concerns of physical abuse that were ultimately ruled out, but there was also allegations of neglectful supervision that were unable to be determined on Mr. Ryan and Ms. Bushman.
Okay, and unable to be determined, what does that mean?
It means that there's not enough sufficient evidence to support whether the allegations of abuse or neglect did occur or did not occur.
Okay. And then was the department yet involved again when it came to John?
Yes, ma'am.
When?
December 16th of 2013.
And what was the referral at that time?
Allegations of physical neglect of Ms. Bushman.
And what was the outcome of that?
That case was, let's see here. Allegations of that physical neglect were considered to be ruled out.
Okay. And then was the department involved yet again when it came to John?
Yes, ma'am.
When?
May 13th of 2014.
And what was that referral?
Referral came for allegations of medical neglect. However, the case was administratively closed as the allegations were already previously investigated.
Okay. Was the department yet involved another time when it came to Johnny?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was the referral on that?
That was a September 14th of 2016. There was allegations of neglectful supervision and physical neglect. Martin, Tracy Bushman, and Corey Martin.
Okay. Was James?
Go ahead.
Was James another child?
Yes.
Okay. So this referral from September 14th, 2016 was in regards to the children Johnny and James by Tracy Bushman and Corey Martin, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
The same parties who are here today, Ms. Tracy Bushman and Mr. Corey Martin.
Yes, ma'am.
And what were the allegations?
About the home environment being unsanitary and safe for the children. There was also concerns of methamphetamine use in regards to Ms. Bushman and Mr. Martin, and also some marijuana use as well. The allegations were found reason to believe.
Okay. And what was the ultimate outcome of that case?
The children were removed and placed into foster care.
Okay. And so the department, and do you know what ultimately happened after they were placed into foster care?
Yes, it looks to see that Ms. Bushman and Mr. Martin did relinquish their parental rights.
And so their parental rights were terminated.
Yes, ma'am.
And so it took the department from 2005 to 2018 to finally address the issues for Mr. Johnny.
You kind of broke up, I'm sorry.
So it took the department from 2005 to 2018 to finally address the issues in regards to John Anthony.
Yes.
It's a total of 13 years, correct?
Yes.
Are you aware of any, as part of your job, do you also run criminal background checks on the parents?
Yes, we do.
And are you aware of any criminal history of Ms. Bushman?
Yes.
And what is that?
In accordance to my affidavit, we have a charge from June of 2011 for fraud and possession of a controlled substance prescription.
Okay. And what about for Mr. Martin?
It was August of 2000. It's driving while license invalid.
Okay. And what is the date of this affidavit?
It would have been on January 5th, 2022.
Okay. 22 or 23?
I'm sorry, January 5th of 2023. My apologies.
Okay. But you don't have an updated evaluation on their criminal history, do you?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you believe that the department did everything the department could at the time to try to prevent removal of these children?
Yes.
Do you have any personal knowledge of the children's current medical conditions?
No, I do not.
Thank you, Mr. Schafer. I pass the witness.
Thank you.
Ms. Price, Cross.
Yes, Your Honor, just briefly. Hi, Mr. Schafer. Thank you for being here today. I just have a couple of questions. Are you aware of the status of either Ms. Bushman or Mr. Martin in terms of their compliance with services with Belong at this time?
No.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not the court should grant a transitional monitored return to Ms. Bushman, or whether parental rights should be terminated at this time?
No, I have no current input nor opinion in that matter.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Savage,
I'll pass, Your Honor.
Ms. Pearsall,
You have never had any contact with Mr. Martin, correct?
Can you guys hear me clearly?
No,
we
we
did
didn't
not
hear
hear
you.
your answer.
Thank you. Ms. Pearsall, no, I have not had any communication with Mr. Martin.
No other questions.
Ms. Harris,
Did any of the prior allegations that you reviewed involve neglect?
Yes, they did.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
redirect.
No, Judge. Thank you.
All right, may this witness be excused?
Yes, Judge.
Is there any reason for me to put him back in the waiting room, or is he free to go?
I believe he's free to go.
No,
Yes,
Judge.
Your Honor. If he may be excused, please.
Thank you, Mr. Schafer, for your time and your testimony. You are free to go. I'll remove you now. Have a good day.
Thank you all.
Next witness.
I would like to call Shelley Nix, please. Good morning, Ms. Nix. My name is Anna Swallow. I represent the interveners, Mr. Tristan and Emily Ford. Do you understand that?
Yes,
And Ms. Nix, you and I have worked together for quite some time, correct?
yes,
But we have not worked together on this case, have we?
no.
Okay. Ms. Nix, how are you employed?
I am a permanency specialist with Belong.
And how long have you been in that role?
It'll be 2 years in October.
Okay. Prior to being a permanency specialist with Belong, were you employed by the Department of Family and Protective Services?
Yes,
And how long have you been employed with the department?
that was approximately 11 years.
And were you a caseworker?
Yes.
How are you associated with this case?
When this initial removal occurred, I was assigned as the primary caseworker. That would have been in about January of 2022, I believe.
Okay. And what's your understanding of why the children came into care?
There were twins in the case, Jasmine and Jameson. born testing positive for methamphetamines, and a family-based case originated for a brief time from November until January following the formal removal, and I was assigned to be the conservatorship worker.
What are your duties as the primary caseworker on a case?
To visit the children a minimum of once a month, preferably in their placement, to maintain monthly contact with the parents in the case.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I was knocked out right after she said I was assigned as the primary caseworker. I lost connection.
All right.
Reappear.
Okay. If you could start over after the primary caseworker testimony, Ms. Nix, and I don't know if it's possible for you to get any closer to your device, or maybe be a little louder. You're kind of quiet.
Okay, I can talk loud.
All right.
Okay.
Are you ready, Ms. Hyman?
Yes, I am, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Ms. Nix.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. After being assigned, I think Ms. Swallow's question was, what are my duties as a primary caseworker? I was saying that primarily it's to see the children with the expectation that that will occur a minimum of once a month, with the majority of those visits in their home, to maintain contact with the parents in the case, to develop and help them maintain their family plans of service, completing service referrals to ensure that they're able to engage in all the services required on their family plan. That may include referring to counselors for psychologicals, for substance abuse treatment. Also with the children, with not just visiting them, but maintaining contact with their caregivers to obtain information about their current well-being and health and safety, and to facilitate parent-child visits, and to just maintain the case throughout its lifetime in the court.
And how long were you the caseworker on this case, Ms. Nix?
I transferred the case probably about 6 months or so, Ms. Swallow. I'm looking back through my notes. I was assigned the case on January 5th. I said 2022, but it was actually 2023. And on July 14th, my supervisor and I met with Miss Powell and Miss Knopp, and we transferred the case back to Medina County.
Do you know why the case was switched?
Yes, because I do not actively work Medina County cases. I'm assigned to 4 other counties, which keeps me pretty busy. The only reason that I was assigned this case at all was because I was mentoring a new worker, and part of the requirements for having a protege is they need to be able to be assigned a new case, or as early as possible. So in July, when cases had caseloads had leveled off and I was no longer mentoring a worker from Medina County, the case transferred back to Medina County's conservatorship worker.
Did you have consistent contact with Ms. Bushman while you were the caseworker?
Yes, I did.
Did you have consistent contact with Mr. Martin while you were the caseworker?
Somewhat. With Mr. Martin, I was able to either exchange text messages with him or phone calls. We had made a couple of plans to try to meet in San Antonio, and I think those plans fell through. And I think shortly after that was when the case got transferred. So he and I only had phone contact and text messages.
Do you believe did you have the impression that Mr. Martin was ready to work services in this case?
No, not at the time that I transferred the case. I wasn't certain that he was really ready to engage in services.
Did you create a family plan of service for him?
Yes, I did.
And do you recall what was on that family plan? If you don't, I can pull it up.
Probably just because so many of them do have similar services. I would say counseling, substance abuse assessment, and the treatment recommendations from that assessment, to participate in visitation with his children, maybe a parenting class. Have I missed anything, Ms. Swallow?
Well, I can pull it up so we can make sure if you want me to.
That'd probably be a good idea. My memory's good some days and faulty other times.
Thank you, Ms. Nix. I'm going to scroll down. Let me see. When was this filed into the case?
This would have been, looks like it was e-filed February of 2023.
Okay.
It would have been an update to the plan.
Okay. And were you on the case at this time?
No, I was not.
You were not on the case on February 2023?
Oh, yes, sorry. What year is this?
We're in
February 2023, yes. That comes after January, sorry.
Okay. Can you read the sentence, please?
Yes, and Mr. Martin was not available to participate in the development of his family plan of service. Group conference was not able to be facilitated. I think I can't see all of it. Caseworker developed Mr. Martin's family plan of service independently without his input.
Okay, and is that normal?
It happens. At that time, we just hadn't had any contact with Mr. Martin.
I guess I should clarify my question. Is it normal that you would create a family plan of service for a parent if they are unable to present themselves to participate?
Yes, it is, because it's required by law to have a family plan.
Okay. And I just want to go over his services because that's the question I asked you. So I'm sorry about this scrolling, everybody. This makes me a little nauseous. I don't know about everybody. Please read the danger and worry statement.
The department is worried that the allegations that Mr. Martin uses drugs and is the alleged father of the newborns puts the children's safety at risk, being exposed to drugs while living in a home where drugs are being used.
Okay. So it looks like what service is, we have a goal statement. I'm going to scroll down some more and it says parents' needs. Is this a service that you requested Mr. Martin to complete?
Yes, complete a parenting class, preferably one on early childhood development because his children were newborns at the time, and then provide a certificate of completion.
Okay. And was it your understanding that Mr. Martin and Ms. Bushman were a couple at the time you were the caseworker?
At the time that I first visited Ms. Bushman, she said Mr. Martin was not there and they were not together anymore. Over the course of the case, I think they resumed communication, but she was still somewhat vague about her intentions with Mr. Martin or his intentions with her.
So you never knew for sure?
No, they were not living together at the time that I first met Ms. Bushman.
Okay. So we have parenting, the next service looks like substance abuse.
Yes, to complete a substance abuse assessment and then follow their recommendations for treatment, whether that might include inpatient or outpatient, AA meetings, getting a sponsor, and participating in random drug testing.
Did you ever have any conversations with Ms. Bushman regarding Mr. Martin's drug use or lack thereof?
To my recollection, Ms. Bushman accused Mr. Martin of using drugs.
Do you know what kind of drugs?
I'm sorry, I do not specifically recall.
Okay. You also have here coping skills and mental health. What is this service?
That he would complete a psychosocial, and that would be done with the therapist, and follow all the recommendations, including psychological, if recommended, that he would participate in therapy a minimum of twice a month to address the safety concerns that led to the removal of the children, and follow the therapist's recommendations for any additional services.
It states here, what does the sentence state?
I did write at that time, Mr. and Ms. Bushman currently live together. If their intention is to remain a couple, they need to engage in services to address the safety concerns.
Okay. And then Mr. Martin, did he sign this?
Because I was never able to meet with him in person, I was not able to obtain his signature on the family plan of service that I prepared prior to the case transfer. I don't know whether Ms. Powell was able to obtain his signature or not.
Did you continue to try to engage Mr. Martin while you were the caseworker over those 7 months?
Yes.
Did Mr. Martin ever engage in any services while you were the caseworker?
No.
Okay. You also mentioned part of your duties were to supervise parent-child visits, correct?
Yes.
Did you supervise any parent-child visits between the mother and her children?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember if you had any concerns at those visits?
My primary concern at the time, was the logistics. We were taking the children to meet halfway, I think in Junction. We did a visit or two, maybe in San Angelo, a visit or two. So the logistics was the primary concern. Miss Bushman typically brought someone with her initially because she was still in treatment. She couldn't leave the facility alone. So a case manager or a friend would be coming with her. I think usually it was her case manager or her recovery coach that was driving her. So she had to have at least one person, but I can think a couple of visits, at least one other additional person came. And Miss Bushman seemed worried about managing the two babies by herself with feeding them and diapering, et cetera, during a visit, if it was just her.
And how many visits were you able to supervise, if you recall?
I'm sorry, Miss Swallow, I don't recall. I know we were at a park in Junction for a couple of hours one day. We went to a barbecue place another day, a church. So I guess at least 3 in Junction for a couple of hours when she was able to participate in visits there.
Did you, at these visits, did Miss Bushman ever bring any supplies?
Yes.
And did you ever have any concerns with regards to how Miss Bushman was treating the children?
No.
Generally, in a case when one parent engages in services to address substance abuse and the other parent doesn't, but they remain a couple, what happens?
The parent who is not participating in services can impact the parent who is participating in services ability to be a viable family reunification option, because you can't just have one half of the equation addressing the services and the other half not.
Is it possible for a parent to complete the services on the service plan but not implement the that knowledge into their daily life?
Yes.
And at that point in time, when that happens, do you still consider the individual compliant with their service plan?
No.
Do you know if mental health was an issue for Ms. Bushman?
I seem to recall that she may have been diagnosed with something when she was younger, maybe something like post-traumatic stress disorder. I know she had a rough childhood growing up. I don't recall specifically what she was diagnosed with as far as mental health. I'm sorry.
Did Mr. Martin ever provide any sort of support for the children while you were the caseworker?
Mr. Martin? No.
Yes. Did he, in the times where you were contacting him, did he ever inquire as to how the children were doing?
It's been a while since I spoke with him. Sorry, I don't specifically recall, Miss Waller.
Did he ever request wanting to see the twins?
He was just struggling to get to meet with me, so I don't think we ever got that far.
Did he ever send any lettings or drawings or anything to the children that you remember?
No.
That's all I have. Thank you, Ms. Nix.
Ms. Savage.
Yes, Ms. Nix. While you had the case, would you consider Ms. Bushman as cooperative and compliant in her services?
Yes.
And actually, at the initial compliance hearing, she was found to be in compliance by the court. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this case went legal in January, and by early February, Ms. Bushman had entered inpatient treatment.
Yes.
Okay. So during your time handling the case, your goal as the case manager or the caseworker was reunification of the twins with their mother.
Yes, it was reunification all the way up until the time of the case transfer.
Okay. And while you had the case, you never received any reports of Mr. Martin either going to the inpatient facility or going to Ms. Bushman's sober living homes?
No, there was no reports of any of that.
Okay. And during that time, Ms. Bushman was reporting to you that they were not together. She was focusing on her sobriety.
Yes.
Okay. And you had no reason to believe that wasn't true.
I did not have any reason to believe she was involved with Mr. Martin.
Okay. And as a CPS worker, legal worker, it is the goal of the department to work with parents to try to get the children back home. Is that correct?
Yes. As long as that's a viable goal, we are required to do that. Yes.
Okay. And so if you have a parent who's completed all their services and has remained sober for over a year, as a caseworker, you would support reunification of the kids to that parent.
Yes, I would.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Ron.
Ms. Pearsall.
No questions.
Ms. Harris.
I have no questions for this witness, Judge.
Redirect.
No, Judge, thank you.
May Ms. Nix be excused?
Yes, Judge.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I was skipped, but I did not have
I'm so
questions.
sorry,
It's
Ms.
okay.
Price.
I just wanted to make sure it was known that I was skipped. No, I'm kidding. But I have no questions for Ms. Nix. And yes, if she could please be excused.
Okay, I do apologize. All right, Ms. Nix, thank you for your time and your testimony. You are free to go, and I will remove you now.
Thank you.
Next witness.
Thank you, Judge. I would like to call my client, Mr. Tristan Ford.
All right, Mr. Ford, I remind you that you're under oath. And as you've seen this morning, Ms. Swallow is going to ask you some questions, and then there will be some cross-examination after. And I don't think I need to worry about this, but I want to make sure you understand the two of you are in the same room together, but you can't help each other with questions. So if you don't know the answer to something, for instance, Ms. Ford can't whisper it to you or vice versa. You just have to answer it to you the best of your knowledge, okay?
Understood.
All right, thank you. Ms. Swallow, you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Mr. Ford. Could you state your full name for the record?
Kristen Ford.
And Mr. Ford, how are you familiar with this case?
I've been the foster parent for the children since January, and then back when they came back into care in December.
Okay, could you give me years on that?
January of 2023, and then December of 2023 till present.
Okay, so from the date that they were removed to the time that they were placed with their mom, and then when they were removed to present day.
Correct.
What is your understanding of the twins' medical conditions?
So I know that they were diagnosed with chronic lung disease, dysphagia. And, that's it.
Okay, and what is it that you do to address the chronic lung disease?
It's really an environmental exposure, but the dysphagia also helps manage the chronic lung disease. So as far as the chronic lung disease, it's really, they go hand in hand. So as far as speech therapy, making sure they're swallowing properly helps with that, but also making sure that they're not exposed to any smoke, dust, environmental particles that could affect their lungs.
And what happens, if you know, when they are exposed to like smoke or dust or something in the environment?
It's an attack on their lungs, and it could cause problems long-term with, it could cause long-term problems. Chronic lung disease is a broader based diagnosis. So it could result in asthma, COPD, things like that in the future.
And do you know the cause of the chronic lung disease? If you don't know, just say you don't know.
I do not know.
Okay. Are they seeing a pulmonologist?
Yes.
And how often do they see that pulmonologist?
They see the pulmonologist every few months. I know they're going to have another pulmonology appointment here right around in November. They're not scheduled yet, but they will be able to have one in November.
Okay. And what happens at these appointments? Do you know?
The pulmonologist speaks to us, catches up on how the kids are doing. He listens to their lungs, checks on breathing, things like that.
Is he in communication with the speech pathologist?
I do not believe so.
Do you know if the speech pathologist reviews the records from the pulmonologist?
I believe she does. Any records that we would give her, she would most likely review.
Okay. What do you do to address the swallowing disorder, the dysphagia, if anything?
We follow the orders of the swallow study. We follow the orders of the speech therapist. We thicken their liquids. So any liquids they receive have to be thickened to a specific consistency. We also are very aware of when they are around like liquids. So even in the bath, we make sure that they're not ingesting any water, because like the speech therapist said, anything that's not thickened can go down into their airways and cause aspiration.
Do the children have frequent ear infections?
Previously to them getting on the proper thickness, they do. But once the liquids were thickened properly, that seemed to help the reoccurring ear infections.
Have they been diagnosed with any other types of respiratory illnesses?
In the past, they have. When they get sick, they've come down with RSV, COVID, pneumonia, I believe bronchitis.
Are the
Hang on
children?
just a second. Ms. Bushman, are you talking to somebody else in the room with you? Okay, well, I need you to stop having reactions to every answer, okay? Just don't do that. Go ahead, Ms. Swallow. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ford, what about congestion and cough? Do the children have a chronic cough or congestion at all?
Yes. So they have a recurring prescription for albuterol to help with any coughing, congestion. But when you continue to manage the dysphagia and the chronic lung disease, it helps with the coughing and congestion.
And is that the same as the nebulizer treatments?
Yes. So the albuterol is what goes into the nebulizer. So yes,
And how often do you give those to the children?
It's as needed.
Okay. And so currently, now that they are receiving the treatment that they're receiving, is it more or less frequent from when they were not receiving the treatment?
Less frequent.
Did either of the children have to be hospitalized due to the RSV?
Yes, both children were hospitalized.
What was the condition of the children when they were returned to your care in December of 2023?
So Jameson had some constipation, double ear infection, and after drinking some bottles, he was spitting up a lot. And then for Jasmine, she had constipation. She was spitting up as well. She also had a double ear infection, and when we took her to our primary care doctor, she was diagnosed with a yeast infection.
Okay. And so immediately upon return to your care, you took them to the doctor to address all these issues?
Correct.
Did they have to be put on medications?
Yes, for the ear infections, they were put on medications. Jasmine was put on a topical medication for the yeast infection.
Strike that. Have you observed Miss Bushman's vehicle?
I have not.
So you do not know whether or not she has a car seat for the children?
I believe the car seats being used currently are Miss Bushman's, but I believe the department has those in their possession.
So you can't strike that. Mr. Ford, this is a question that has come up frequently throughout this case. So I'm just going to go ahead and get out there and ask you. Why did it take you and Miss Ford so long to intervene?
When the children went back to Miss Bushman in October, we were no longer privy to the case. We would watch court cases on YouTube to keep involved in the case, but we had no contact with the department. We saw the children for their birthday, but other than that, we had no contact with anybody. We fully thought that the children were going to be reunited and the case would be closed. When the children came back into care in December, we waited up until the first court date to find out what was happening in the case before we decided to intervene.
And that's when you contacted me?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you, when the children were returned to your care in December 2023, what was your level of communication with Miss Ontropolis?
It was right around the holiday time, so it was very limited. But I mean, we talk not as frequently as maybe I would like, but I mean.
Let me rephrase that, Mr. Ford. From the time period when the children were returned to you, when they came back into your care, December 2023, up until you intervened, March 2024, do you believe you had constant, frequent, effective communication with Miss Powell?
No, ma'am.
Did you attempt to communicate with her and she was non-responsive, if you remember?
Yes.
And how did you address that?
I believe we addressed it with the children's ad litem and CASA. We brought it up to them.
Okay. And were there any changes made?
She has been better about communication.
As of when?
I couldn't give you an exact date.
Okay. Has Miss Powell ever walked through your home?
She's been inside the main living area to receive the children or drop the children off.
Has she ever gone to see where the children sleep?
I do not believe so.
Has she ever gone to see where the children bathe?
I don't believe so.
Has she ever gone into your kitchen and looked through your supplies, your food, or your diapers, or anything like that?
She's looked in the fridge one time.
Okay. Do the twins have any upcoming medical appointments?
They will have upcoming medical appointments. They'll have a repeat swallow study soon. They will have, in November, they'll have a 2-year well check. They'll have a developmental checkup. And then they will both see pulmonology and GI. Those two are not scheduled due to their scheduling not going out that far. GI and pulmonology will reach out when the time gets closer.
Okay. What about dental?
They should have a dental appointment. I believe those are every 3 months. So there should be
And-
one coming up shortly.
These appointments are in addition to their 2 times weekly speech.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I pass the witness.
Ms. Price.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Ford, I'm sorry, you said that their upcoming appointments with their specialists are coming up in the fall. Is that correct?
Yes. Typically when, right now, I think it's when they're turning 2 years old, they're going to go back and see their specialist.
Okay. And if the court were to transition the children back to Ms. Bushman's care, would you be cooperative with that process?
Yes.
And if the court were to start transitioning the children back to Ms. Bushman's care, would you try to make sure that she had all of the information necessary to continue to care for the children and provide the care that they need?
Yes, we've done that in the past as well.
You mentioned that you saw the children on their birthday. When is their birthday?
November 9th.
And at that time, the children were in Ms. Bushman's care?
Correct. We saw them a week after their birthday. Like to clarify, they had hand, foot, and mouth around that time. So we delayed our visit up until they were better.
And who arranged for you to be able to see the children on their birthday?
My wife and Ms. Bushman were in communication.
So that wasn't something that Belong required or that the court ordered. That was something that Ms. Bushman agreed to?
Yes.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Ms. Savage.
Yes, Mr. Ford. When were the twins placed back in your home in December? Do you remember the date?
The December 22nd.
Okay. And you're aware that the caseworker did take them to see a medical professional December 22nd, following picking them up from Ms. Bushman.
Yes, a medical professional came and saw them at the shelter.
Okay. And at that examination, no double ear infections were noted in either child on December 22nd, correct?
I do not believe so, no.
Okay. The double ear infection wasn't diagnosed until December 27th, after the children had been in your care for 5 days, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you'd agree with me, winter times, kids get sick, flu season.
I can agree to that.
Okay.
Yes. But
Okay.
the ear infections are caused by swallowing issues.
But again, the children didn't have ear infections on the 22nd.
Not on the 22nd.
You testified kids left in October. Did you and your wife get another child placed into your home after the twins left?
Objection, relevance.
Your Honor, this goes to the best interest. We've dragged out all of Ms. Bushman's parental decisions, and I think the court is entitled to know some of the decisions made by the Fords.
Overruled. All out.
You can
You
answer.
can answer the question.
Yes, we had another child placed in our home.
When was that child placed in your home, if you recall?
I believe in November.
Okay. And when you got the call that the twins were needing placement, originally your licensing agency was not going to allow you to take them. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you and your wife gave notice on that baby and had that baby removed from your home?
Correct.
Okay. And actually, you dropped your license in order to get the twins. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you put one infant child onto the street in order to take these two twins. correct?
Objection, argumentative, speculation, relevance.
Your Honor, we have foster parents all the time give notice on children, and children end up back in foster care.
And sidebar, she says they put the kid on the street.
I'll sustain as to the sidebar. Let's just watch that, Ms. Savage.
Okay. Mr. Ford, you did have that child leave your home, though?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know the twins' level of care?
At the moment, I believe it's basic. I believe they're trying to get it up to moderate.
Okay. And how long have you been a licensed foster parent? Not since regaining your license, but when you and your wife originally got licensed?
2 years.
Okay. So you're aware you get more financial assistance if the children's level of care goes up?
I am aware of that.
How much money do you receive currently for having these twins in your home?
Currently, we receive, I believe it's $800 a
Per
month.
twin?
No, total.
And do you and your wife pay, or do the children go to daycare?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And do you and your wife pay for that out of pocket, or does the state cover that?
The state covers it.
Do you have any other governmental assistance that help you support these children?
They receive the thickening agent from a pharmaceutical or some sort of medical company that provides that kind of stuff.
Oh, I'll clarify. I meant like food stamps or WIC or anything of that sort.
They were on WIC, but not, I guess they're still on WIC.
Okay, so you and your wife are able to collect WIC benefits for these children?
We have not collected recently, but they still are on it.
When was the last time you guys were able to get those benefits?
I do not recall the date.
Okay. But per your home study, you and your wife's combined income is almost $7,000 a month?
I suppose, I guess so.
Not including the subsidy benefits you're receiving for the twins, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Ford, did you or your wife or an agent of you report Ms. Bushman to the Housing Authority to subject her to possibly losing her housing? And you are under oath. It is perjury to lie under oath, Class B misdemeanor. So think about your answer before you give it to us.
Objection, relevance.
I think this court should know who they might be sending these children home to and the links that they went to if they did it. Just ask him if he did it or his agent.
Judge, I don't think it's relevant.
Overruled.
Mr. Ford,
Can you repeat the question?
did you, your wife, or an agent you employ, so someone who represents you in any capacity, call San Angelo Housing Authority to report Ms. Bushman so she would be subject to losing her housing assistance?
And Judge, I'm also going to object to the attorney-client privilege. If any communications I've had with my clients, they're not to disclose that.
Okay, well, I'll give an instruction that he can answer the question, but if it involves any privileged information between the Fords and Ms. Swallow, then he is entitled to maintain that privilege. He does not have to vitiate it.
You don't have to tell us what you and your attorney talked about.
I have never asked anybody to specifically report Ms. Bushman.
Okay. And you yourself did not make the call.
No, I have not.
Okay. And to your knowledge, your wife did not.
She is not.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Pearsall,
No questions.
Ms. Harris,
Did you attempt to keep the other child in your home when you found out that Jasmine and Jameson were needing a placement again in December?
Yes.
Why did you ultimately have to put in notice?
There was a misrepresentation on our part with Divinity.
Okay. Did anybody tell you that you could not have Jasmine and Jameson and the other foster child in your home?
Yes, Divinity did.
And did you attempt to work with them to be able to make that work?
Yes, we did.
And was any sort of solution ultimately provided to you?
Divinity did not offer us any solution to the problems that were being brought up.
And was it solely due to the amount of children that would be in the home under the age of 3?
Correct.
Did you want to put in notice on the foster child?
No, we did not.
Did you go some time without receiving assistance, financial assistance for the children due to dropping your license?
Yes.
Are you financially motivated to seek adoption of Jasmine and Jameson?
Not financially motivated, no.
What is your reason for seeking permanent placement of the children with you?
We we believe and would like the children to get the best possible care with doctors and therapists and continue the care that they are currently receiving.
Are you asking for the children to be permanently placed with you because Ms. Bushman makes less money than you?
No.
Do you think that even if the children are placed with you, they should maintain some kind of relationship with Ms. Bushman in the future?
Yes.
Do you feel like you've been cooperative in helping them maintain a relationship with her up to this point?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Ford, in regards to Jasmine's double ear infection, when she saw the doctor on December 22nd, 2023, were you present at that appointment?
I was not.
Do you know what symptoms were explained to the doctor?
No.
Do you know if he thoroughly examined her?
No.
So you don't know whether or not he missed the ear infection?
Correct.
Do you know where the foster child that you had, that you ultimately had to put notice on in your home, do you know where that child went?
After she left her home or currently?
After she left your home.
She went to another foster home.
Do you know where she's currently at?
With her family.
Okay. You're currently licensed, correct?
Correct.
When did you renew your license?
The end of last month, I believe. A few weeks ago.
Okay. So June or beginning of July?
Correct.
Okay. And that $800 a month subsidy that you just testified to, when did that start?
For a while, it was only 400 because there were some issues with payments, but I think it would have been maybe March when we first started receiving payments.
Okay, and was that due to your licensing, or was that due to the children being placed with you as a kinship home?
It was due to them being placed with us as a kinship home.
Okay, and have you ever sought out medical financial assistance to care for these children?
No, I don't know if I understand the question fully.
Have you ever pressured the department or sought to be licensed so that you could receive more financial assistance?
No.
Are you bonded to Jameson and Jasmine?
I'd say so, yes.
And are they speaking?
A few words, yes. I mean, they're 19 months old, so they're beginning to speak.
What do they refer to you as?
Dad.
Jackson hearsay.
Judge, talking about the children in this case and their bond with this family and what they refer to them as.
Is hearsay.
Well, I'm going to allow it. Overruled.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ford, could you repeat yourself?
Dad or dada.
And what do they call Miss Ford?
Mom.
Hearsay, Honor.
Objection. Overruled.
And do you have other children in the home?
Yes.
And how old is that child?
4 months.
And do you believe that the twins are bonded to that baby?
Yes.
Are the twins bonded to each other?
Yes.
Have you seen any changes in the children's behavior after visits with the mother?
Yes.
Could you explain that to the court, please?
Typically after they come back from an in-person visit, they're a little bit more rambunctious. They can maybe they don't listen as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ford. I pass the witness.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
Just
One
very
question.
briefly.
All right, go ahead, Ms. Price.
Mr. Ford, you said that the children are more rambunctious when they come back from visits and they don't listen as well. How long does that last for?
Typically that afternoon.
And those visits take place in Junction. How far is that from Kerrville? You're in Kerrville?
Correct. It's
How,
about it's about an hour.
And if what is it that you are asking the court to do today?
I guess our affidavit is a termination. I'm
And
not.
Judge, I object to asking my client like legalese and legally what's going to happen today. I can represent to the court exactly our position, which I've done from the very beginning.
I didn't ask for legalese, Your Honor. I just asked what they're asking the court for. And he began to answer in perfect English.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Yeah, I heard him too. It was English.
But it wasn't legalese.
Your Honor, I object to the sidebar.
All right, let's watch the sidebar. I'm going to allow him to answer the question. Overruled. You can answer the question before.
I guess it would be termination.
And that's because you want to adopt the children?
If possible, yes.
And if the court has other options available, legally speaking, are you open to those?
Speculation.
I don't think asking him if he's open to other options is speculation. Overruled.
And I guess, Mr. Ford, while the judge overruled the objection, let me ask a different way. Are you aware of other options that may be available other than termination of the parents, the biological parents' rights and adoption? Are you aware of any other options in this case?
I've spoke to my attorney about options. I don't know which ones would be a viable option in this particular case.
And I'm definitely not asking you to discuss any conversations you've had with your attorney. I just want to make that clear. If there was an option in which the court appointed you and your wife as essentially that the children were in your legal custody and that Ms. Bushman had visitation rights, would you be open to something like that?
Be open to discussion, yes.
And if that option meant that you may not get any financial assistance for the children in terms of foster care subsidy payments or daycare assistance or anything of that nature, is that something you would still be willing to consider?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll pass the witness.
Any other recross?
Yes, Judge, I had one last question.
I do as well, Judge.
Who did? Oh, okay. Go ahead, Ms. Harris.
The other child that's in the home, is that a foster child or is it your biological child?
A biological child.
I'll pass, Your Honor.
Ms. Swallow.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Ford, you understand that these cases cannot go on forever, correct?
Correct.
And that the laws of Texas mandate that we have to give these children permanency.
Correct.
And this case is coming on almost 2 years, correct?
Correct.
So at this point in time, it's necessary for the court to make a decision as to the permanency of these children.
Yes.
Thank you. I pass the witness.
Any other questions for Mr. Ford?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Let's take a 30-minute recess for lunch. It's noon. Ms. Swallow, who are you calling next?
Judge, I think that's it.
You don't have any other witnesses?
I don't think so.
Okay, well then my mistake. Does anybody else have witnesses I intend to call?
Your Honor, oh, good.
Just briefly, I have I'm sorry, let me look at I'm on the wrong page. The courtesy worker, Misty Martinez, and then to briefly recall Miss Ferguson regarding the most recent visit.
And can I ask that we maybe take like a 10-minute break and then just keep going?
That's fine with me. I thought we had several more witnesses after lunch. Miss Savage, what about you?
I just have Miss Potts and Miss and the counselor from the rehab. Honestly, I think both of them can be done within 30 minutes, even with all the cross.
10 minutes enough for everybody here?
I'm going to ask for 15, Judge.
All right. I think we can stretch it another 5. All right. It's 12. Let's take 15 minutes. Actually, we've been talking a little bit. So let's say 12, 16-ish. Everybody make your way back. I'm just going to leave everything open. So I'll see you all then. Court's in recess.
Your Honor, can you just send a broadcast message for the witnesses?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Miss Swallow, are you resting?
Yes, Judge.
All right. Miss Hyman, are you ready to go?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So interveners have rested. And I think before we get into Miss Savage's witnesses, Miss Price said the department wanted to recall a witness.
Yes, Miss Jennifer Ferguson?
All right. Is there any objection to the court hearing the recall witnesses of the department prior to hearing from Miss Savage's witnesses?
No,
No,
objection.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Then that's how we'll proceed. Miss Ferguson, you said?
Yes, Your Honor.
It appears that she's here, but she's not here.
She's Schrodinger's witness. I don't know if anybody else gets that very nerdy reference there.
Well, apparently I'm a nerd too then, because I picked up on it. Miss Ferguson, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, there she is. All right. I want to remind you that you're under oath. Miss Price is going to ask you some questions, and the other attorneys will have the opportunity to cross-examine you. And please speak clearly and loudly as we are recording this. If you hear an objection, please stop talking until I can rule on the objection, okay?
Yes.
Are you able to turn on video, or do you not have that capability?
I am driving. I'm trying to find a safe place to pull over. That way I can do that. I apologize.
That's no problem. Are you comfortable answering questions on the phone until you can pull over?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Price, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that, Judge.
Okay, you may proceed.
Ms. Ferguson, did you have the opportunity to observe a parent-child visit between Ms. Bushman and the twins since our last court hearing?
I'm sorry, the call broke up.
Yes, I'll repeat the question. Did you have the opportunity to supervise a parent-child visit between Ms. Bushman and the children since our last court hearing?
Yes, ma'am, on Tuesday.
And where did that visit take place?
At Lum's Barbecue in Junction.
And how did that visit go overall?
Well.
I'm sorry, did you say it went well, or did you say well because you were going to like put a comma and continue talking?
It went well. I'm sorry, I just pulled over that way. I'm not mobile reception.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So for the record, you are pulled over now?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So the visit went well. Can you tell me how long was the visit for?
It was a 2-hour visit.
And can you just give a quick description of the visit?
We met at Lum's Barbecue, and Miss Bushman was a few minutes late. She did advise of the traffic situation. She purchased the children lunch. She brought toys, diapers. She was attentive to the children. There was one incident where, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You were saying there was an incident?
There was one that Jasmine had, she was trying to chew a piece of sausage that Miss Bushman had given her and had choked on it a little bit, and there was another MCA there with me, and he was sitting closest to Jasmine, so he did remove the sausage from her mouth. But other than that, there was no incident.
At the last hearing that you testified at, do you recall testifying to a number of concerns about Miss Bushman's ability to care for the children?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you observe those same behaviors in this past visit?
No, she was very attentive to the children.
And I lost my train of thought. I apologize. And overall, what were the things that you observed that led you to the conclusion that the visit went well? What specific things did you observe?
She was playing with the children when Jameson had fallen down. She was quick to be attentive to pick him back up, help him back to a standing position. She did bring her double stroller. She had left it in the car originally, but did go out to the car and get it and bring it in to use it to be able to take the children with her to order their meal. She brought Pampers. She was very aware of her surroundings and attentive.
And is there anything else about the visit that you think it would be important for the court to be made aware of at this time that I haven't already asked you about?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Your Honor, I'll pass the witness.
Right, Ms. Savage,
No questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Pearsall,
No questions.
Ms. Harris.
Thank you, Judge. Is there a patio at the restaurant?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Miss Bushman take the children outside to play on the patio?
No, ma'am.
Did she ask you?
No, ma'am.
What toys did she bring to the visit?
Mr. Potato Head?
Anything else?
Not that I saw. She might have had other toys with her.
Did she decide to go out and get the double stroller, or was she prompted to do that by somebody supervising?
I prompted her.
And were there any diaper changes during the visit?
Yes, 2.
And did she do any of those on her own?
She was escorted by the first diaper change by the courtesy worker, Ms. Martinez, and the second diaper change, you were at the visit and went into the restroom with her as well. The second time, she used the double stroller to bring the children into the restroom. The first time...
Did she use it on the first time? Did she use the double stroller the first time?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Judge.
Any other questions for this witness?
Judge, I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Wong.
Thank you. Ms. Ferguson, how many people from the department were present at this visit?
Myself from Belong, another mobile case aide, Mr. Trotter, and the courtesy worker, Misty Martinez, I believe, and Ms. Harris.
Great. So from Belong in the department, 3 people?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that normal to have 3 people supervise a visit?
No, ma'am.
Why were there 3 people there?
I requested to have a second MCA attend the visit with me.
Why?
To be more comfortable because of the testimony that I had concern that Ms. Bushman might be confrontational or want to discuss testimony in her case.
Did she try to do that?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. I pass the witness.
Any other questions?
Yes, just one follow-up. Miss Ferguson, what time was this visit held at?
12.
12 to 2?
Yes, ma'am.
And the temperature was at least in the 90 degrees. Would you agree with me?
Yes, ma'am. It was very humid. It had just rained.
So probably taking out children in hot temperatures who have lung conditions and the hot humidity is probably not a good idea. Would you agree?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll pass witness.
Anyone else?
No.
May this witness be excused.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson, for your time and your testimony today. You are excused and free to go about your day, and I'll remove you from the hearing now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Didn't you have one more witness to recall, Ms. Price?
Your Honor, I was actually going to be the one to call Miss Misty Martinez, and then I only have one more witness after that, so we're down to the last 2.
And
that's correct.
Your Honor, I will call CASA. I'm sorry I didn't get to bring that up before our break, but it will be short, I anticipate.
That's fine. All right, I'll bring Ms. Martinez in now. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Savage, your witness.
Miss Martinez, how are you employed?
I am a conservatorship worker with the Department of Family and Protective Services.
And you are out of the San Angelo area, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you the courtesy worker for Miss Tracy Bushman?
That's correct.
And how long have you had Tracy on your caseload?
I would say close to a year now.
And so during that time, how often had you been visiting with her or speaking with her?
I see her monthly. We speak probably weekly. When the kids were there, I saw them and her every other week.
So during this time that you've been visiting with her, have you had the opportunity to go and see Miss Bushman's residence?
Yes.
And is that residence appropriate?
It is.
Does she have baby furniture for the children?
She has beds for each. They have their own room. They share it. There's toys. There's a bathroom. She's got the locks on the cabinets and electrical outlets, things like that.
During your inspections of the home or visits to the home, have you ever seen anything like inappropriate, any kind of drug paraphernalia or alcohol or anything that would have given you any kind of concerns?
No, ma'am.
And you testified that when the children were with Tracy, you were seeing them at least every other week?
That's correct.
And when you visited with her and the kids, did the kids seem bonded to Tracy?
They did. I would come into the room. They'd be in the living room area. They'd walk or crawl. We're starting to walk. They would stay close to her, but they would go and play with toys, laugh. They'd look back to make sure she was there. It seemed very appropriately bonded.
Okay. And did you ever have any concerns for Tracy's care of the children during your visits with her and the kids?
No. She took care of medical, things like that. I know one time I went, they had, I want to say it was the foot, hand, and mouth. But she had taken them to the doctor for that and was on top of it.
And did Tracy seem open and cooperative with the department? Any requests you may have made from her?
Yes, she seems very open and honest.
Okay. And have you had any reason to believe that Tracy has relapsed during the year you've had her on your caseload?
No.
Okay. Is it your opinion that the children should be returned to Tracy's care at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you believe returning them to Tracy, that she would have the ability to continue to meet their needs?
I believe so.
And while she did have the kids, as you testified, she was taken to the doctor. Were they also enrolled in daycare?
Yes, that's correct.
And if you have any knowledge about it, do you know if the kids had, or at least one of the children, been started in any kind of speech therapy while they were with Tracy?
I don't know about the speech therapy. I cannot recall that off the top of my head.
Okay. And to your knowledge, Tracy has maintained employment for at least the last 6 months?
Yes.
And she has appropriate transportation?
Yes.
A valid driver's license and an insured vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Surprise.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Martinez, as the courtesy worker in the San Angelo area, would you be the one to assist Ms. Bushman if she needs help, like locating a daycare or providers, medical providers for the twins? Would you be able to assist in that?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know whether there are speech language pathologist providers in the San Angelo area?
Yes, there are.
And would you be able, do you know whether she has started looking into providers for the children?
We've talked about if the kids were returned, that she needed to be on top of all of that.
And if the court were to return the children in a transition monitored return, and there was, say, 4 to 6 weeks before placement would take place, would that be sufficient time to get all the referrals in place so that the children can have a seamless transition to new providers?
I believe it would.
Okay. And is there anything else that the court can order that would help make a transition of the children back to Ms. Bushman's care more seamless, or to just promote that in any way?
I'm willing to go every week to see her and the children in person if that's what the judge wants me to do. I can do that.
And then are there any, other than getting them enrolled in daycare and with their new providers, is there anything else that Ms. Bushman would need to do to make sure that they're able to receive all the care there in San Angelo?
No, that probably covers it. If they do come back and she needs anything, a referral or something, she can contact me and I can help her find somebody local.
What are concrete services?
Those are services that we can ask payment for. They're once or twice services. It's not something that we can pay every month. But if she gets into a situation where she's like, hey, I'm stuck, I need to get this paid, or, there's an issue like that, I can request that. And usually
So
it gets done.
if she were to need any kind of like air filtration device for the children because of their lung issues, is that something Concrete Services could help with, or is that something that could be obtained through Medicaid?
That should be able to be obtained through Medicaid. And if not, we could always request it through Concrete Services.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your testimony, and I pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Pearsall,
No questions.
Ms. Swallow,
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Martinez, my name is Anna Swallow. I represent Tristan and Emily Ford. They're the foster parents to the children. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you, are you aware of the children's medical conditions?
I know that the doctors, I think in San Antonio, had said something about some aspiration possibly going on with the kiddos. And I know that they were wearing a helmet, I guess for the shape of the head. I believe that's all I knew about.
Okay. Do you know whether or not they're receiving ongoing treatment for the dysphagia? That's the aspiration you were referring to.
I know that they are seeing somebody in San Antonio for that. And when they were with Tracy, she had them seeing somebody here, and that they take a thickener to help with that.
Are you aware of whether or not Tracy has had any positive drug tests this year?
She did tell me that she did a nail test, and it had come back positive at a low dose for, I believe, amphetamine or methamphetamine.
Okay.
But she was very surprised about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Martinez. I pass the witness.
nurse,
When you would visit Miss Bushman with the children, where were those visits at?
Sarah's house.
So it was a residential living center?
That's correct.
Or a sober living center?
Correct.
And was Miss Bushman working during that time while the kids were with her?
I don't believe she was yet. I think she was looking for a job. She had to get them in daycare and all of that when they got placed. And then I think she was looking for work.
And were the kids in daycare?
Yes.
So the kids were in daycare, but she was not working, correct?
I think that's correct.
And you said you visited every other week?
Correct.
So how many times did you visit her with the children?
Well, I think they were only there maybe 2 months, so probably roughly 4 times.
So that's just an estimate. You don't know for sure?
I'm sorry, say
Is
that
that just
again?
an estimate? You don't know for sure?
I didn't hear you.
Is that an estimate? You don't recall for sure how many times?
I would say 4 times at Sarah's house, and I've been to 2 visits in Junction.
And you said that you had discussed the hair follicle results with Ms. Bushman, correct?
Yes.
And what was her explanation for why that would be positive?
When I made the home visit, she was very upset that had come back positive, and she had no idea why. She couldn't recall her exact date of last use, was going to NA. So she's just, she was shocked.
And do you know why she was asked to leave the sober living home in December?
I believe she was vaping or had a vape in the room with her.
Is that the only violation you're aware of?
Yes.
You're not aware of any other violations?
Not that I can recall off the top of my head.
Do you know what her work hours are like?
I think she works evenings right now at Schlotsky's.
And what is the plan if the children are returned to her?
I believe they're able to work with her schedule. If she can get the kids in daycare, then she should be able to move to days.
And have you spoken with her employers to find out if that's possible?
No, ma'am, I've not talked to them directly.
And as a courtesy worker, and this being a possible monitored return, are you able to visit the home with the children weekly?
Yes.
And why were the children not visited weekly when they were with her previously?
It was when we staffed, I was told go every other week.
And you were at the last visit?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the kids have a good time, you think?
Look that way to me.
Do you think they had a good time, the children?
Yes.
Did they enjoy the visit? Okay. Did Ms. Bushman order appropriate food for them?
I mean, I believe so. I know there was, Jasmine was eating some sausage and the casing, she kind of choked on it for a minute, and so she pulled that out. But I mean, I believe it's appropriate. The casing should have been taken off, but
And she provided drinks for the children?
yes,
And there was testimony that she had toys, correct?
that she had what?
Toys with her?
Yes.
And what toys did she have?
She had some Mr. Potato Head doll things where the kids can
And
connect them and stuff like that.
did she have a diaper bag with all the necessary supplies in it?
Yes.
And did she take the children to the restroom for diaper changes?
She did.
Did you accompany her on any of those?
On one, yes.
And did she take the children in the stroller?
The first one, no, because I offered to carry one of them for her in the bathroom, and then the second she did.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Redirect, Ms. Savage.
No, Your Honor.
Any other questions for Ms. Martinez?
No questions.
No questions.
All right, Ms. Martinez, you are excused. Thank you for your time and your testimony today. And all
right, thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Next witness, Ms. Savage.
Miss Chelsea Ashton, Your Honor. Miss Ashton, how are you employed?
I am the clinical director and a licensed chemical dependency counselor with the Drug and Alcohol Awareness Center for the Concho Valley, the Journey Recovery Center.
Awesome. And how long have you been licensed as a drug counselor?
I have been fully licensed for about 2.5 years. I received my LCDCI status about 5.5, maybe 6 years ago.
Right. And how long have you been working at the Concho Valley or at the San Angelo Journey Recovery Center?
I've been at the Journey Recovery Center since we opened, but I've been with ADAC for 13 years.
Okay. So how do you know Tracy Bushman?
I was her primary counselor when she was here at the Journey Recovery Center for her inpatient treatment services.
Okay. And during her time at the inpatient facility, how often would you meet with Tracy?
So we would do a minimum of 1 hour of individual services per week, but I would often meet with her daily for at least a short period of time, and then also interact with her during group sessions, probably at least 3 to 4 times a week.
Okay. And during y'all's individual sessions, what were some topics that were covered?
I think that our main focus for Tracy from the time that she came in was on, of course, her meth use and the effect that that had on her life and her parenting, and then also on her mental health and making sure that we were engaging in mental health services to deal with her issues with depression.
Okay. And so because of the main focus being her meth use and the effects it had on her life, you guys did talk about her lengthy meth history and her prior CPS cases?
Yes, we spoke about all of those things. We talked about her interactions with her older kiddos and the interactions with CPS, about, the impact that it had on her ability to maintain custody in the past. Some of the feelings, I guess, that she has about or had in the past about CPS and about, interacting in those processes. And really about how she uses or had used in the past substances in order to self-medicate as opposed to seeking out mental health services.
And as part of her treatment, was Tracy able to identify some of her triggers and causes for previous relapses?
Yeah, absolutely. We were able to work through a lot of her relationship issues, sort of family related trauma, to look at a lot of self-esteem types of things. And again, there's a lot of internal and lifelong issues with depression that were an underlying note. And so once we were able to get her fully detoxed, because even though, we do a short period of detox for methamphetamines when they come in, to get it completely out of the system and our minds working clearly takes quite some time. And then we're able to engage in mental health services and start treating depression. It's a lot easier to start working on identifying triggers and identifying appropriate coping strategies in a healthy way.
And in your professional opinion, do you believe Tracy made significant progress in wanting to maintain her sobriety?
Yeah, definitely. When she first came in, there was a lot of anger and feelings that she expressed to me along the lines of, feeling like if people would stay out of her business, there wouldn't have been a problem. But as we progressed, she was really able to see that there was a problem, and then to identify what those problems were and how she and her kids needed to have a better life, and what that would look like and what that would include. And so, to start building towards that and choose things like sober living as opposed to returning to San Antonio, choosing to stay in a completely different community, choosing to go to sober living, working towards having to support herself instead of relying on somebody else, changing her environment totally. I mean, there are a lot of changes that she chose to make in order to pursue having that better life for herself and her children.
And did she acknowledge this was the first time she had made such significant changes as opposed to previously?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then after Tracy gets out of rehab, she went to sober living. Did you continue to have any contact with her after that?
Yeah, definitely. She went to sober living at Sarah's house, and that program, I don't have a lot of daily contact with that program, although I am still the director over RT recovery residences. And so from time to time, I do come to Sarah's house. And so I'd seen her, of course, once the babies were able to come and visit, I definitely made myself known because I had to come and squish them. And so I was able to come and see them while they were there. And I also am the supervisor for the director of the house. And so anytime there were any concerns or issues, or when things are going well, I like to pop in over there and make sure I know what's going on. And a lot of my clients do stay in contact with me on a fairly regular basis. And I'm in their group chat and things like that at Sarah's house to make sure I kind of can keep on top of what's going on.
Okay. And so whenever you were able to visit with Tracy at Sarah's house when she had the twins, what was your perception on the twins' bond to Miss Bushman?
They definitely love their mom. Anytime that I was there, they were kind of glued to her physically. They definitely wanted to be in contact with her, all, climbing all over her. It's very obvious that they are bonded with her in a strong emotional way.
And did Tracy seem attentive to the kids and willing to meet their needs?
Yeah, during the times that I was able to be there, I definitely witnessed her doing things that she needed to do. And I was there a few times early on when they were still fairly small. So I saw her doing things like using the food thickeners and doing all of that kind of stuff. And, feeding, a lot of feedings, a lot of diaper changes, a lot of playing, and all of those types of things.
Okay. And do you continue to remain in some sort of contact with Miss Bushman?
Yes, she checks in with me probably a couple of times a month at minimum when she was able to, really anytime that she makes the next step, whether, or when she's frustrated or when she is worried, but also when good things happen, when she's proud of something she's doing, she'll make contact with me. And so I've been able to go over and see her apartment. She lets me know when she got a new job, and then of course, when things aren't going her way as well, she contacts me just to talk. And so we definitely have had some pretty decent contact over all of the time since she's been here in San Angelo.
Okay, so you're definitely part of her sober support community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and with your training and licensing and work experience, do you believe Tracy is maintaining a healthy, sober lifestyle?
As far as I know, and of course I'm not there 24/7, but I have seen her reach out over and over to her support system during difficult times. I've seen her participate in sober activities. I know that she makes meetings. I know she's involved with her recovery coach. And so it is definitely, she's doing everything that we would recommend to someone who is trying to maintain a sober lifestyle for sure.
Okay. And there's no expectation of you cutting Tracy off or her sober coach, Ms. Potts, ending that kind of relationship in the near future. Is that correct?
No, absolutely not. Her recovery coach is able to follow her for several years after she leaves the formal treatment program. And then our alumni often stay in contact with us for years and years and years.
And we lost our reporter. Ms. Hyman, what was the last thing you were able to report?
The last question was, okay, and with your training and licensing and work experience, do you believe Tracy maintains a healthy, sober lifestyle? And the witness said, as far as I know, and of course I'm not there 24/7, but I have, and that's where I lost it.
Okay, Ms. Savage, can you pick up from there?
Ms. Ashton, can you repeat your answer? So you have seen it, and I guess what is she doing to maintain that lifestyle?
Yeah, I was just saying that I have seen Tracy reach out to her support system, both to myself, to other professionals, as well as her peers in recovery. I know that she goes to meetings. I know that she is working. I know that she is maintaining contact with, like I said, reaching out when she's having a difficult time. And so, those are the types of things that we coach our clients to do in their recovery. And, she's been able to maintain her housing. She's been able to work and start to do all the things that we ask her to, and through some really difficult things. And so, she's doing all the things that would indicate to me that she's maintaining her recovery.
And I think my last question was how long her sober support systems will be available to her. So yourself and then Ms. Potts, her recovery coach.
Right. And that was, the answer to that is indefinitely. We are not going to cut ties with her. That's not the kind of thing that we do in our community. Her coach is able to provide coaching services to her until they determine together that there's not a need any longer. But we also have an alumni association among our clients who completed services with us that allows them to stay in contact with the agency indefinitely. And so they participate with one another in activities. They stay in touch with us as an agency. They do things that help them give back to current clients and participate inside our facilities, in our services. And so there are a lot of ways that she'll be able to maintain contact. And of course, she has my contact information as well as Melissa's, and she knows that she can reach out to us at any time.
And actually, to your knowledge, she does reach out to yourself and Ms. Potts, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we speak to each other. We're in the same office and we speak to each other daily.
I'll pass the witness around.
Ms. Price.
I have no questions for this witness.
Ms. Pearsall.
No questions.
Ms. Swallow.
No questions.
Ms. Harris.
No questions, Judge.
May this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Ashton, for your time and your testimony today. You're free to go about your day, and I'll remove you from the hearing now.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. Savage, any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor, I rest.
All right. Ms. Pearsall, your case, anything?
Your Honor, I'll call Mr. Martin.
All right. Mr. Martin, can you please unmute?
Yes, sir.
As you've heard me say several times today, Ms. Pearsall is going to ask you some questions. The other attorneys are going to have the opportunity to cross-examine you. If you hear somebody object, please let me address the objection before you keep talking. And please speak loudly and clearly, as Ms. Hyman is reporting all of this. And I'll remind you that you're under oath. Ms. Pearsall, you may proceed.
Mr. Martin, state your name.
Corey Martin.
And what are you asking the court to do today?
What am I? I'm sorry, repeat it.
What are you asking the court to do today? Where would you like your children to go?
To go to Tracy Bushman.
Okay.
Her mother.
Okay. And are you willing to follow any rules the court gives you if the children are returned to their mother?
Yes.
Okay. You willing to make sure that you don't violate any visitation rules?
Oh, yes. Yes, ma'am.
And you're willing to support the children if the court orders it?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you think it would be in your children's best interest to be with their mom instead of with strangers?
Most definitely.
Can you tell us why?
Because her mom, her as a mom is just, that kind of love is, nobody else can beat that. She loves her kids with all her heart. Pretty sure of it.
And from what you've seen about your children, do the children love their mom?
Last I've, heard or seen, yes.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Price.
Mr. Martin, if the court orders that you cannot go around Ms. Bushman and the children, are you willing to abide by that?
Oh, most definitely.
And do you realize and understand that if you were to violate such an order that you could risk Ms. Bushman being able to care for the children?
Yeah, I definitely don't want that order.
Okay. And are you currently working?
Yes, ma'am.
And you would be able to abide by any child support orders the court might put in place?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Savage.
No questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Swallow.
Mr. Martin, have you seen Tracy with the twins since January 2023?
No, ma'am, I have not.
Have you seen Tracy since January 2023?
Just here in court.
Are you still using methamphetamines?
No, ma'am. I'm trying to stay sober, but it's a lot more difficult here in San Antonio.
I'm sorry, a lot more difficult. What?
Here in San Antonio, where I'm at.
Thank you. I pass the witness.
Ms. Harris.
Have you sent any support financial or diapers or anything? Have you sent anything for the kids?
I've sent, I think I, gave Tracy some money without her asking or anything, just when I had some extra money to give.
When was that?
Oh, I can't even remember.
How
a
much have
date,
you
but-
sent her for support?
Oh, just a couple hundred.
And did you send anything for Christmas for the kids?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Anything for their birthday?
No, ma'am, I have not.
Why did you decide not to work the services that the department was offering to you?
Well, it's kind of a difficult story, but I did not believe that I was the father for a long time. And so I found out, through the DNA test that I was. And then after that, like I have not talked to Tracy, so I haven't been keeping up with that part of my life. Like I've just been working and I
When's the
really
last time
tried.
that you? It's okay. When is the last time you spoke to Miss Bushman?
Back in January or whatever that I've spoken to her. I've
Since
tried to
January
email
of
her.
what year?
23, I think.
Are you aware she said she spoke to you in December of 23?
Maybe I have the time wrong. I'm not sure.
Has she ever let you know that she considers you a trigger for her relapsing?
Well, I'm sure. I'm very much a trigger. That's why I've been trying to stay.
Are you under the
out of-
influence of any substances today?
No, ma'am.
Do you have any other children?
Yes, ma'am.
Where are they, sir?
One is an adult, and she's living with his sister, and my son James has been adopted.
Was that because of a CPS case?
Yes, ma'am.
Where are you living at this time?
In San Antonio.
Is it the same residence where the children were removed from?
No, ma'am.
You
I
don't
have
need to
my
give
own
me an
apartment.
address. Just tell me approximately where you're living.
I have an apartment on the northwest side of San Antonio.
Does anybody live there with you?
Yes, ma'am. I have a roommate.
And do you know if that roommate has any criminal or CPS history?
No, ma'am. He does not.
Does that roommate use drugs?
No, ma'am. He's an older gentleman that I've known for quite a while.
Would your home be an appropriate place for Jasmine and Jameson to live?
I would need to do some safety updates, but other than that, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said other than like some safety updates and stuff, we need to address like the wall outlets and cabinets and whatever.
Do you have beds for the children?
I do not.
Do you have a bedroom for them?
I'm in a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's me and my roommate, so they would not have their own room per se.
Do you have any photos of your children?
I have photos of my son. I've seen pictures through friends, mutual friends of me and Tracy's that she's kept in touch with. I mean, I see them through that way, but I haven't seen them in person in quite a while.
Has Miss Bushman ever sent you any pictures?
No. Just of my son, and I was back in, I haven't even seen him in a year, I guess.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor.
Just briefly, Judge.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Swallow. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, is Tracy the mother of James?
Yes.
And both your and her rights were terminated in a CPS case?
Yeah, they were both relinquished. Yeah.
And that was for use of methamphetamines?
Yes.
How much do you make a month financially?
Make about, I can't even add it up right now. I'm like like 2,800 a month, 3,000.
Do you pay child support on any other children?
No, ma'am, not anymore. Like I said, my daughter is grown up and away from the.
Thank you.
Our mom.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I pass the witness.
Any other questions for Mr. Martin?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Ms. Baldwin.
The 2,800 you make a month, is that before taxes?
No, ma'am.
Hmm?
No, ma'am.
Okay, they take taxes out and then you get 2,800 a month?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. No other questions?
Any other witnesses? Ms. Pearsall?
No, Your Honor, I rest.
Okay. Ms. Harris, witnesses?
Yes, I would like to call the CASA advocate, Your Honor. Ms. Roden, how are you associated with this case?
I am the CASA program director, and I've been working the case since January of 2023.
And during that time, about how many times have you seen the children?
More than 10. We see them monthly, so.
And have you been able to observe them with the foster parents?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been able to observe them with Ms. Bushman?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been able to talk with the Fords about how the kids are doing?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been able to talk to Ms. Bushman about how the kids are doing?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is your understanding of why the children were initially removed?
Due to methamphetamine use.
And would that also be considered neglect?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you feel like Ms. Bushman has addressed her drug use during this case?
I feel like she's addressed the drug use, yes.
Do you feel like she has addressed the neglect of the children adequately in this case?
I don't, I guess that's where our concern still lies, just with her ability to safely parent the children.
And what are those specific concerns? And if there's a whole lot of them, I can go one by one so that you don't have to ramble.
I'll try to be succinct. If at some point you would rather ask questions, go ahead. I think that the concern has been kind of ongoing, especially post what we believe is Ms. Bushman's sobriety, is just not a real change in the parenting of the kids. You know, we have the family-based safety services case where, you know, she continues to use, she's using in the house with them. And then during the reunification, even though she was no longer sober, just kind of the same maybe approach to parenting. She wasn't necessarily making sure that all of their needs were met. She was vaping in the house with the children. So I guess it would be the pattern of maybe not always putting the children's needs first that has been a continued concern for CASA.
And have you been able to observe some of the visits with the children?
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you feel like those went?
Overall, the ones I have been to have gone fairly well, but just the same pattern kind of concern continues into those visits. So whether it be sometimes, you know, needing further assistance to meet both kids' needs, or you know, there was a visit where there was a fall and accidents happened, but just kind of maybe her ability to pre-plan or really make sure both kids are getting the attention that they require to remain safe.
And are you taking into consideration that these are twins? They run around, it's tough for one parent?
I am, yes. I do know that it's tough.
Are your concerns because she's a single parent, or is it because of her parenting style?
No, it's because of her parenting style, not because she's a single parent.
And has she seemed open to any suggestions or critique that she's been offered?
I think that she is somewhat open, but she tends to kind of minimize. I've kind of seen her roll her eyes about their thickener in a visit. So I think that she's somewhat open, but I think that some of the changes have been lacking, or some of her acceptance of the issues have been minimized.
So do you feel like the children would be in any kind of danger if they spent any immediate danger, if they spent a few hours with their mother?
I would be concerned of the risk that's there, just with her sometimes inability to meet, like I said, both of their needs and kind of put them and their needs first.
And what about her long-term ability to meet their needs? What is your impression of that?
I would be concerned. I mean, I have, you know, just looking at past history, I know that people can change. I know that Ms. Bushman, I don't want to minimize her changes in the work that she's done, but sobriety doesn't always equal like a safe and stable home. And I think it's that safety piece and parenting changes that are lacking. So I'd be worried in the future just based on what we know now of her parenting abilities.
And are you aware there may be some differences in income level between Ms. Bushman and the Fords?
Absolutely.
Are you making any of your recommendations based upon that?
Absolutely not.
Is it fair to say that you've spoken with the Fords probably more often than you've spoken with Ms. Bushman?
Probably, just because the requirement to see the children monthly and the amount of time the kids have been with the Fords.
And would your recommendation be based upon whether you like the Fords or Ms. Bushman better?
No, ma'am.
And what is your recommendation? Do you believe that the children should be placed with, and I'll do this in a couple phases. Do you believe they should be placed immediately with Ms. Bushman to reside there permanently?
No, ma'am.
Do you believe that they should be placed there in a transitional kind of monitored return?
No, ma'am.
Where do you think they should be placed permanently?
I think they should remain in the care of Mr. and Mrs. Ford.
And do you think that's in their best interest?
I do.
And why do you think that's in their best interest?
I believe that's in their best interest because the information that we have on Ms. Bushman's ability to parent the kids safely and to not put two 18-month-old, in danger. And then what we know about the Ford's ability to parent the children, I just believe they'd be safe and stable and have all of their social and health needs met with the Fords. And I can't say the same for Ms. Bushman right now with the information that we have.
And is it your understanding that the department or Ms. Bushman are asking that the kids be placed back in a step up kind of a monitored return?
That's my understanding.
Why do you not think that would be successful?
I just have fears that we're trying something that put the kids back in danger. We all tried it in October. The kids were back in danger. I worry about the oversight during the reunification. There were some concerns with the oversight during the previous reunification, how often the children were visited. So I feel like placing them with Ms. Bushman is very risky and puts the kids at risk, being as young as they are and having the medical needs that they have and just the needs developmentally because of their ages. I think it's a great risk to the children that we would be taking to do that.
And how old is this case?
It's been open since January of 2023, so a year and a half, roughly.
And do you think that the children deserve some kind of permanency anytime soon?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Ms. Price.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Roden, are you asking the court to terminate parental rights today? Or I guess, are you recommending? Because I guess CASA doesn't ask necessarily, but is that your recommendation, is for termination of parental rights?
With my understanding of the options that are on the table right now, yes.
And what are the specific actions or inactions from Ms. Bushman that you can point to that lead to that recommendation?
I think that would lead to the recommendation would be, she has worked her services. And like I said previously, I don't want to minimize that, but I worry about her ability to meet the goals. Like when we all met and we had the family group conference, we developed goals in addition to those services. And so my concern is that her ability to safely parent the children hasn't really been met as part of that. I also, we've had some conversations where, she's just said things kind of like, I think it was the nebulizer that was making the wet sounds. And so I stopped the breathing treatments and just kind of things like that, where I feel like the kids maybe needs wouldn't be met.
And which specific goals that were developed during the family group conference do you think that she has not demonstrated that goal has been met?
I think the ability to safely, to provide a safe and stable placement for the children.
What would she have needed to show for you to have come to a recommendation of a monitored return?
Sure. I think in that initial monitored return, I would have been hopeful that she would have been able to maintain that stable housing. I think the plan was for her to remain at Sarah's house until she could get on her own. So for me to make that recommendation, I would have liked to see her be successful in maintaining that stable placement for the kids and then safely moving into the apartment instead of the situation where the kids had to be moved. They had to spend the night in the shelter. So her able to kind of maintain that, her ability to not vape with the children after taking classes that, you know, talked about why she shouldn't. My understanding was that Ms. Powell provided that education and information, and yet Ms. Bushman continued to do that with the children, even knowing how everybody in the courts felt. So I think to see her have made the appropriate changes and made sure that that initial reunification was safe and stable for the children would have absolutely changed my recommendation in this case.
So is it safe to say that once that initial monitored return was unsuccessful, that at that point there was nothing she could do to change your mind to the contrary?
No, I don't think that would be a fair statement. I think that there was still, when I earlier referenced kind of her rolling her eyes out of the thickener, that was after the removal from the home. The conversation about the nebulizer, I believe, was after the kids were removed from that. So some of those behaviors seem to kind of continue. I think that had, you know, she picked up from that removal of that monitored return and really been able to articulate, and I don't mean articulate well, but I mean, all of us had felt like she understood why they were removed, understood the danger that they were placed in, had a plan for how to make that different. I think that also would have changed my mind at that point as well.
So is it a fair assessment that, I don't want to say that she did too little too late, because you did acknowledge that she did complete her service plan, but maybe the emphasis is on the too late part of that statement? Is that fair to say that that's kind of how you're feeling here?
I think that considering kind of the legal timelines, I think that plays into it some, yes.
Okay. I'll pass the witness. Thank you, Ms. Roden.
Ms. Savage.
Ms. Roden, you testified that her being able to maintain housing is an important factor for you, but she's maintained her apartment for the last 6 months. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you been able to make a visit out to that apartment to see if it's appropriate for the children?
No, I visited by Zoom with Ms. Bushman back several months ago, I think in April.
Okay. And then you'll acknowledge that Ms. Bushman has made significant changes from January to today.
January of 2023 to today?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And you'll acknowledge that when the kids were in her care, she was taking them to medical professionals, correct?
Yes.
And actually, that was the only time that Jameson's swallow study indicated he was not aspirating, correct?
Yes, but I do believe at the bottom of that swallow study that it was at a risk for aspiration. He was at a high risk or at a risk for continued aspirations.
Okay. And you'll acknowledge that the nebulizer is as needed treatment, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you'll acknowledge that her, stopping the thickener was under the advice of the primary care provider for the kids, correct?
I think my concern with that is that I've seen the doctor's notes. So yeah.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Yes.
Same.
It was at the advice of the doctor, correct?
I've seen a doctor's note, yes, after.
And if judge does grant the monitored return, obviously CASA still stays in this case. The ad litem still stays in this case. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the children would continue to be enrolled in daycare, or different daycare, but daycare with Ms. Bushman, correct?
That's my understanding of her plans, yes.
Okay. And there's going to be a courtesy worker who's also in the area who's able to see the children, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so while, your hesitancy is understood, we would be able to continue to monitor these kids and make sure Ms. Bushman has addressed the issues that you're acknowledging were from back in December and January.
I would hope that there would be oversight that would allow us to monitor that, yes.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Pearsall.
What is the point of child protective service cases as far as you understand?
Ensure safety of children.
Do you understand that if a parent does these services, it is the job of the court and the intent of the legislature to unify parents with their children?
That's always our first goal, yes, ma'am.
No other questions.
Well,
thank you, Judge. Ms. Roden, you testified that you've been able to observe the children with the foster family and you've been able to observe the children with the mother, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
We've heard a lot of testimony regarding how these kids are bonded to their mother, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have, can you share with the court any observations you have made in regards to the children in the foster family?
Sure. I mean, I've made a lot of observations there. The children seem comfortable. They seem familiar to the home. They seem very bonded to Mr. and Miss Ford when I visited in the home. You know, if they drop a toy or drop food, they look to the parents, kind of showing they rely on them, those sorts of things.
Okay. And do they seek out comfort and affection from the Fords?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you believe that the back and forth of a monitored return is in the best interest of these children?
Not at this time, no.
And can you elaborate a little bit? You said something about breathing treatments and mom telling you she thought it made the kids worse or something to that effect. Could you elaborate more on those circumstances?
Yeah, we were just having a conversation about the kids and their needs, and she had stated that when the kids are with her, that she felt like when they had the breathing treatments, they sounded worse, and she felt like it was the breathing treatments making them worse, so she stopped them.
So she stopped them.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a yes?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Do you have concerns regarding the recent positive nail test?
I do definitely. The 4 to 6 months that we heard earlier could be the window, could have included when the kids were with Miss Bushman, I think is my greatest. That I heard today that it was environmental and that definitely could have covered the time that the children were in the reunification. Definitely has me concerned.
Were the children ever tested after the after the failed monitored return?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Were you recently able to observe a visit between Miss Bushman and the twins?
It's been about a month ago. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was it since our last court hearing?
I can't remember. There's been 3. I don't think so. I think it was between the first 2.
Okay. And did you have any, how did that visit go?
Overall, it went fairly well. Ms. Bushman brought the double stroller. She sat with the kids, the part that I was at. I got there a little bit after them, so they had already eaten, but she brought them appropriate food from McDonald's. The only concern was when they were both climbing on the play place, and I think that's just a little unprepared for them going 2 separate directions. And so Jasmine fell, hitting her face on the rungs of a ladder. And Jameson, I kind of got up and helped Jameson down the slide.
You kind of got up and helped him, or you had to get up and help him?
I had to get up and help him. I mean, he's kind of a toddler and he was toddling towards a slide that was higher than my head, and she was trying to address Jasmine slipping down the ladder. So I had to get up and make sure he didn't fall down the slide.
Okay. Have you had any contact with Mr. Martin?
No.
Have you ever tried to meet him at all?
I've tried to call him multiple times in the beginning of the case at the phone numbers that were available to us. And I've also talked to the caseworker about, do you have an address? Do you know where he lives? I think at that time she was meeting him away from the home. And so she didn't have an address that was good to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you. I pass the witness.
Saris, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Any other questions from Ms. Roden?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Ms. Gersel.
Ms. Roden, Mr. Martin has participated in some of the prior hearings as well as mediations, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you have had some interactions with him, just maybe not outside.
Yes, right, just not outside of court. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now the questions.
Any other questions from Ms. Roden?
No, Your Honor.
No,
All right.
Judge.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Roden. Ms. Potts is still in the waiting room. Is anybody going to call her?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to bring her in and excuse her. I understand, based on the procedural posture of this case, that the department, as petitioner, is seeking the monitored return, and the interveners are seeking the termination. So despite that, I'm still going to go in the same order of petitioner and then other parties and give the petitioner the right to rebuttal. No other party will have the right to rebuttal. So does anybody need any time before you present your closing arguments? No. Okay, Ms. Price, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. This case reminds me of a saying, a couple of sayings, but the first one is, there but for the grace of God go I. And I think to the fact that we are all but one phone call away from the scrutiny that the department can put in any of our lives. The evidence was absolutely clear and uncontroverted that Ms. Bushman had a long and serious addiction to methamphetamine, one that she may be addressing for the rest of her life. That addiction has cost her the parental rights to other children, and it has cost her the care, custody, and control of Jasmine and Jameson in this case. It may have also led, or at least contributed to, a number of the issues that they have currently. The reason that I'm reminded of the saying there, but for the grace of God go I, is because I was also a single mother of twins, and I was very young, and I did not know how to bathe them, and I did not know how to feed them, and I did not know how to do any number of the things that we expect parents to know how to do. Which leads me to another saying that I'm reminded of, and that is, it takes a village to raise a child. Because I did not have a long history of addiction, and because I did not have the scrutiny of the department in my life, I had the luxury and the privilege to make mistakes as a parent. I had the luxury and the privilege to forget to go prepared for an outing with my twins, and that wasn't putting my parental rights on the line. I was able to have somebody show me how to bathe them, how to feed them, how to do all of the things that we expect parents to do. I was able to have somebody help me determine who their pediatrician was going to be and how I was going to get there and how I was going to balance school and working and them being in daycare and all of those things. And it wasn't held against me that I needed that help. Because of Ms. Bushman's history of addiction, we are now pathologizing all of her within the normal range of parenting style to be a life and death situation for the twins. And I think that we are unfairly elevating the issues and the concerns with her parenting abilities. And I think that is in large part because, yes, those were choices that she made. That was the life that she lived that led her to this point. But the purpose of a CPS case is because once that has happened and once the scrutiny of the department is in a family's life, the purpose and the intention is to make it safe for the children to be reunified with their parent or parents. The main reason that we are involved is because of Ms. Bushman's long history of methamphetamine use. And the evidence before this court is that she is doing all of the things that we would expect somebody to do who is committed to their sobriety and to sober living. She did not she did not react to the children's medical needs in the way that we would have liked her to. She does not think through all of the needs that they would have for visitations and things in the way that we would like her to. But I think that what is most important, Your Honor, is that she did get there in the end. And at this point, to move towards termination at this point, at this juncture, to me, it feels like what is the purpose of this process? If we're going to get to this juncture and the reasons for termination are, yes, I'm not discounting the long history of addiction. I'm not discounting that. But we knew that going into this process, and we knew that going into the reunification efforts. And so to do so at this juncture feels like we're doing it because we wish it would just be a little better. And I feel like that's not the test. That's not what we're supposed to be weighing. I think at this point, what the department is asking for and what Belong is asking for is the reasonable transition back to her care in a way that still ensures child safety and ensures that they have all of the treatment and needs, all of their medical needs, that we can transition them in a way that's safe so that their new providers are in place before they get there. And so the 4 to 6 weeks that the department is asking for, where she has starting with 4 hours of unsupervised one weekend and then another 4 hours the next weekend. The things that we were asking for, that is a reasonable transition plan that allows Ms. Bushman to show to this court that she can, in fact, take care of these children. And whether she utilizes her village to do so, I think shouldn't be held against her. It's one of the things that we ask parents to do, is to create these safety and support networks for them. And we've heard from witnesses to say that Ms. Bushman has done precisely that. And so the department and Belong is urging the court to grant them the transitional monitored return. We're asking for the dates that are in the in our motion to simply be updated to reflect where we are now, with a 4-hour visit. If it's too soon to take place this weekend, then the following weekend, a 4-hour visit, followed by another 6-hour visit, followed by an overnight visit, followed by another weekend visit, until placement can take place. And if the court feels that even a longer transition, we believe 4 to 6 weeks would be a sufficient time to see and make sure that Ms. Bushman is able to do so in a way that addresses the children's needs, and should address the concerns of those who worry about those parenting choices or that parenting style. And so we ask that the court consider that and make that ruling at this time. And thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Price. Ms. Savage.
Your Honor, we are completely in support of the transitional monitored return and do believe that that would be in the best interest of the children. Based on the evidence, what we know is that Ms. Bushman has completed all her services. We know that she is sober and she continues to use her sober support system to maintain that lifestyle. We know that she has appropriate housing. She's maintained that housing for the last 6 to 7 months. We know that she's employed and she continues to be employed. We know that she is bonded to the children. More importantly, that the children are bonded to her. These kids know who their mother is. And to sever, and that's what they're asking for, right? The termination cases are the civil equivalent of death cases. Terminating Ms. Bushman's rights when she's put in so much work to change her lifestyle and to make the requested changes that we put on her. And she's done. And she's maintained that for months, right? This isn't, she just moved in last week to her apartment or last month. She's been in this apartment since roughly the end of January. She is done everything for these kids to show that she has changed. What we know is that when she had the children in her care back in October to December, while she might have minimized, according to everyone, some of the medical conditions of the kids, she's still taking them to the doctors regularly. She had still scheduled them for a swallow study, which actually that was the only time that Jameson's had a swallow study that indicated he wasn't aspirating. So maybe the doctor telling her we wean him off the thickener or we take him off the thickener might have been in the right move, because according to their own expert testimony or their own testimony from their speech therapist, that is the treatment goal for children who need thickeners. You wean them off little by little, they need less. So to say that Ms. Bushman does not take their medical conditions seriously, I think isn't a fair assessment, because she was doing all the things we were still asking her of. She had enrolled one in speech therapy and was getting the other one started in speech therapy as well. So I think the evidence that we have today does not meet the burden of clear and convincing for termination as to a ground and as to best interest, because all the people who have seen Ms. Bushman in the home with the children have all said that she's attentive, that the children are bonded to her, that they had no concerns for her ability to care for the kids. The ones that we have saying, oh, well, she could have done something better, are seeing Ms. Bushman trying to wrangle 2 toddlers in a public setting, in a gas station, McDonald's, in a barbecue joint. I mean, I think any parent of small children, especially toddlers, can recognize and understand when you're in a public setting, it gets a little difficult. You add 2 that are mobile, it gets pretty difficult. But to make that assessment that, oh, she could be a better parent, she should be able to catch her toddler from falling and him not fall and hit his face when he's learning to walk, when he's climbing, when he's running, that's not a fair assessment. What I do know, though, is that when Ms. Bushman had the choice to put the kids in a shelter versus letting them go to a placement where she knew that they could receive the care while she was getting back on her feet, she made the choice selflessly to put her kids first. She made the choice that she wanted to make sure her kids' needs would be met and sacrificed what would be in her best interest and what would guarantee her getting her kids quicker, because she cares so enormously for her children. So when the court is considering whether that tie should be cut today, I just hope that that is a piece of information that is kept in your mind.
So, Ms. Pearsall.
Judge, this case is the whole reason as to why law exists and is drafted and why this court exists. And all of us, or most of us, I should say, do this for a living. Any case, regardless of the facts, if you look at a biological parent and then you look at a foster family, by definition, foster families are richer, are more educated, and don't have any known drug or criminal history. Sometimes they do that we don't know. And as much as Ms. Swallow elicited from every witness, oh, this isn't about the money. This is exactly about money. Yes, they are richer. Yes, they can afford an attorney. Yes, they can afford to subpoena witnesses and pay for their testimony. But that's not the purpose of why these cases exist. Every parent comes into CPS court because they have an issue. They're a victim of domestic violence. They are drug addicted. They're having some mental health issue. They have something they're struggling with. And what this court tells them at the very first hearing, and what the department tells them at every staff, every family group conference, is if you get it together, if you do the classes you've been court ordered to do, the goal is to reunify you with your children. And Ms. Bushman did that. And to consider anything, giving Mr. and Mrs. Ford any rights, honestly defeats the purpose of the system. She doesn't just deserve to have her children back. Anything else, in my opinion, would be unconstitutional and go against not just these children's best interests, but everything that the system is set up to do. And I think what most clearly demonstrated that is when she was asked, would you like Mr. Martin to have some visitation? And she said, no, not until he finishes drug treatment. I mean, that's huge. She truly gets what the issues are that brought her here, and she has demonstrated being clean and jumping through all sorts of hoops under a microscope for many, many months now. So I'm asking that you order the monitor to return. I very strongly suspect, based on this never-ending trial, that she'll be sabotaged every step of the way by these placement, by CASA, maybe by some other parents. So I think it will be very difficult monitor to return. And honestly, Judge, I think the only way to avoid that is to just place the kids there and cut out the people who are going to clearly sabotage it. But I understand that why the court would want to do it in steps and why the department wants to do it in steps. And to assure that Mr. Martin is ordered to pay some support, child support, to help her take care of these children. And I'm asking that be ordered based on minimum wage.
Thank you, Ms. Swallow.
Thank you, Judge. I want to start by saying that while I appreciate Ms. Price comparing this case to her life, it's a completely different situation. Ms. Price was not a meth addict, and nor did she have the department involved in her life for 19 years prior to having her twins. So they're not comparable in that sense at all. We've already tried returning these children to this mother twice. They were able to come home to the hospital with her after she and the children both had tested positive. That did not work out. She continued to use. They were then placed back with her in October of 2023 in a monitor return, which then failed. The system is not set up to continue to place children back in the care of their parents when their parents continually are unable to properly care for their children. I don't believe it was a choice of Ms. Bushman to allow her children to go to a shelter. The department removed the children. If it was a choice, then Ms. Bushman would have gone with the children to a shelter. There was a situation for which it was no longer safe for the children to be with Ms. Bushman. I would request that the court take judicial notice of the entire file. It is my client's position that it's in the best interest of the children that the parental rights of Tracy Bushman and Corey Martin be terminated. Ample evidence, by the way, of testimony and exhibits have been provided to the court. And I believe that all of the evidence has met the burden required of clear and convincing evidence standard for termination of the parental rights and Corey Martin. As to Ms. Bushman, as already stated, and as the court knows, she has a very long, clear history and a pattern of abuse of methamphetamines by admission and several attempts at rehabilitation. This includes several prior CPS cases, one of which resulted in the termination of 2 other children. 19 years since 2005, CPS has been involved in her life. It took 11 years for the department to finally terminate the rights between her and her son, John Anthony Bushman. And that case ultimately was due to meth use. She also has another child that was terminated the baby James Martin, for which Mr. Corey Martin was the father. Same circumstances, meth use and unsanitary conditions. So this isn't just, this case, let's give a mom a chance. There is a clear history of the same facts, cookie cutter facts that match this case, by which it's clear that these children should not be returned to this mother. According to mom's testimony, she's only been using meth for the past 10 years. That's extremely concerning, considering that the department's been involved in her life for the past 19 years. I'm not sure what happens in the home of this mother, but if there's not meth use, then it's definitely circumstances that allow for abuse and neglect of children. I believe that the evidence has been presented to terminate mom's parental rights. I believe she knowingly placed the children in conditions or surroundings that endanger the physical and emotional well-being of the children. I believe she engaged in conduct which endangered the physical and emotional well-being of the children she used throughout her pregnancy. They were positive. She failed to support the children. I haven't heard any testimony regarding child support. She didn't pay child support. She was the cause of the children being born addicted to methamphetamines. She used a controlled substance following having completed inpatient treatment. We heard from an expert this morning that stated that Ms. Bushman's nail test went back 4 to 6 months. That means that she had to have been exposed to meth in November, October, or September of 2023. And that is extremely concerning. Even though the expert was able to state that she can conclusively say it was environmental exposure, however, she could not conclusively say that it was not due to ingestion, just because the level of amphetamines had not been met, but that does not mean that they were not present. So either way, Ms. Bushman was somewhere she should not have been on a consistent basis after completing rehab just a few months ago, which is, it goes to her credibility, and it goes to the safety of these children and what she was exposing them to and what she was exposing herself to. These children should have been tested once they were removed. I believe Mr. Martin's rights should be terminated on the same grounds. Additionally, I believe that he's constructively abandoned these children and that he has failed to comply with his service plan. As far as best interest is concerned, the Fords have provided for these children emotionally, physically, medically, and every way possible since being placed in their home since January 2023. They supported Ms. Bushman in the goal of reunification until it became evident to them that the children would not be safe in her care. There's been multiple opportunities for Ms. Bushman to attend doctor's appointments. The dates were provided. Ms. Bushman never attended. These children deserve stability, predictable stability, without the threat of drug exposure and neglectful conditions. I don't believe compliance is about, checking off boxes on a family plan of service. I don't believe that what Ms. Bushman has been able to accomplish is enough that would allow her children to be returned home. I believe that there was meth exposure. I believe she still, to this day, this morning, she stated she believes that people are, what were her words? Doesn't believe that the children's medical issues are as severe as they are made out to be, that she's never seen them sick. Your Honor, they were hospitalized for RSV. Like, they have been very sick. They have chronic lung disease. For her to have said that this morning was extremely shocking, that after all this time that she would not educate herself and state something different. I don't believe that she has any insight into the damage that she's caused these children due to her smoking every day and using methamphetamines during her pregnancy. Her testimony was that she used several weeks before the children were born premature. There's no way her UA would have been positive for meth if she had used several weeks before. There's no way the children their meconium would be positive if she had only used one time. I have extreme concerns that the mom cannot take care of these children, both of these children, safely. I don't think that, the mindset that they'll regrow healthy tissue, or taking them off a nebulizer treatment, or, taking them off thickener, all these things that she has done, and her failure to recognize that these children have serious medical issues, I don't think that's something that this court can overlook. And I don't think it's something that we should risk placing these children back in her care. I think it could result in very detrimental effects to these children, hopefully not death. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Your Honor, I would ask you to consider that this case is not just about drug use. There is long-term drug use history, treatment Yes. That is not the only cause for concern in this case. There's also neglect, and there's a long CPS history of neglect too. There's a history of neglect of these children. When they were sent home from the hospital with her, you heard testimony today that she left the children at home without telling anybody, all alone, while she left the home. There were also, you will recall, testimony from one of our previous 2 hearings that there was neglect in the sober living home. They were concerned about whether she was meeting all of the children's needs. So, Your Honor, with that in mind, I've also tried to base my ultimate position upon the Hawley factors, which I know that you will be considering when you make your decision. To begin with, that's the desires of the children. They've resided with the Fords practically their entire life now. And I know that doesn't give Miss Bushman much of a chance, but they've been with the Fords because of Miss Bushman's decisions and choices. So at this point, they now see Tristan and Emily Ford as their parents. I know they're only foster parents. I know that foster parents aren't intended to be forever, but that's why we have time limits on these cases. So kids don't spend 18 months with somebody and begin to think they're their parent. Miss Bushman at this point is somebody that they got to see for a couple of months, and somebody they see occasionally on visits. They do enjoy her. And I am thinking to the future as well. I think that they are going to want to know their mother. I think that they are going to want her to be a part of their lives. The Fords have consistently maintained that she will allow them to be a part of their life. I understand some of the mistrust in that, but they have been consistently stating to me that they want them to be a part of her life. They were initially extremely supportive of Miss Bushman. They did not go into this looking to take a child away from a parent. The other thing that we have to look at is the needs of the children now in the future. She didn't meet their needs the very short time she had them at the beginning of their life, and she ultimately didn't meet their needs when they were with her for a couple of months. She has a long history with the department, and it can be reasonably concluded from that long history that she can get things together long enough to get her kids back, but then she falls back into the same patterns of drug use and neglect once the supervision is gone. In fact, she's done that in this case. She went to drug treatment, tested clean for a period. The kids were returned to her. However, she couldn't keep everything together more than a couple of months. During that time, the children get the treatment they needed. Hygiene was questionable. She bathed in the presence of the kids, even after education on the dangers of smoking to children. She didn't work despite the kids being in daycare. She failed to obtain housing in a timely manner. And as a result, the kids were removed and she was asked to leave her sober living home. She subsequently had a drug test that clearly established she's not been honest about either her own drug use or her exposure to drug use during a time period that does include the time the children were with her. Ms. Bushman then got housing with the abundant assistance of her caseworker. She's had a couple of jobs that won't be maintainable in that fashion if the kids are with her due to her hours. She's not been to any visits with their doctors or their specialists. She shows no personal knowledge about their needs and admits that there may be nothing wrong with them. You'll recall, Your Honor, that she could not even explain what their diagnoses were, what they were called, to be even able to pass that information along to a primary provider who she then relied upon, supposedly, to stop giving them the previously prescribed treatments. She's had visits with them that go great. That go okay, not great, but they go okay. I'm not going to nitpick on tiny little details at the visit. However, I will note that something like being repeatedly told to take a double stroller to visit 4 twin toddlers shows that she is not able to make these decisions on her own. It does take a village to raise children, but the problem is that Miss Bushman's village up to this point has been CPS. CPS was with her for many, many years before we ever had this case, and CPS has been with her telling her how to do it now. She was in a sober living home telling her how to do it. And yet when she's not prompted, she still is not making those very simple changes to her parenting style. I think there's enough evidence and testimony to conclude that the kids would not face necessarily immediate danger if spending time unsupervised with Miss Bushman. But I think it does show that she's either incapable or unwilling to make the kinds of changes in her life and parenting styles. And that poses a very real long-term danger to Jasmine and Jameson. She's had years and years of guidance and scrutiny without improvement, years and years of drug treatment with continued relapses and a positive test as recent as this year. I also, considering best interest of the children, would need to look at the parental abilities of the Fords. They have shown not only ability to meet their needs, but a willingness to have them at all sorts of different kinds of appointments, to lose their licensing in order to make sure that these children were going to get consistent, stable, ongoing, loving care. Programs available to assist mom. Right now, her caseworker's assisting her. She has had testimony that she has support through her ongoing drug treatment, but we don't have any people in her life that are not required by law to work with her or have not been involved in drugs somehow that can continue to give her the kind of support that she would need. She hasn't brought anybody to a visit that would show that they can help her wrangle kids at a visit. It's CPS there doing it for her. So we don't know that she can take advantage of the programs that are available to her when she had the opportunity to be in charge of their medical care and their medical treatment. She threw out everything that came before, gave her very uninformed opinion to the doctor, and went with that. Took her a while to even get one of the children, not both, but one of the children for an exam. Plans for the children, her plans are very vague. As you'll recall, Your Honor, there was a lot of saying that she will figure it out. She will figure it out. Well, if they come home, then I'll change my schedule. Well, if they need this, then I will figure it out. If I'm short on money, I will figure it out. There's no actual plans. There's nobody outside of CPS that she said she could rely on, that she said she could go to, other than the sober living facility that asked her to leave for failure to follow the rules. Stability of both parties' homes. Yes, Ms. Bushman has been in her residence for 6 months. It took her a long time, and in fact, losing the children in order for her to get up and get the motivation to get that place secured. And that was with the heavy assistance of her caseworker. There is no demonstration that she is going to be able to maintain that if somebody is not there holding her hand through all of that. And we can't be there forever. That's not what these cases are for. Acts or omissions of parenting. We've had 3 hearings, and each testimony that there's no reason. We've got lots for her failure to meet these needs. You know, we've got professionals that said they have taught her how to not use drugs. They have professionals that say they have taught her to, or parenting classes, you know, that she's learned to do that. But we don't have anybody that's testifying that she's actually putting these things into place. It's actually the opposite. And that leaves us with no excuses for the acts of omission. Ms. Bushman clearly loves her children, and the children seem to enjoy their tie with her. But I am absolutely certain that at this time, if the children could tell me what they want, it would be to remain where they are, where they have consistently maintained a safe, loving relationship that has met all of their needs, while hopefully continuing a relationship with Ms. Bushman in the future. I don't think that they would necessarily want her gone from their lives, but I don't think that she can care for them. And I don't think that there is a possible legal solution to this, where we have the Fords and Ms. Bushman and Mr. Martin co-parenting in any kind of manageable way. For those reasons, I am not supporting a transitional monitored return, a regular monitored return, or a full immediate return to the children. I appreciate the position that Ms. Bushman has been in, and I do appreciate the changes that she has been able to make during this case. However, she has not demonstrated that these are long-term, ongoing changes with full understanding of the needs of twin toddlers and getting older children. I do not believe that she can meet their needs in the future, now, or even 6 months from now with a little bit of monitoring. So for those reasons, I'm not supporting any kind of monitored return. I think that the testimony and the evidence have clearly established that both parents placed the children in danger to actions both before and after their birth. I think that Mr. Martin has failed to complete his service plan, failed to provide any kind of service. He is here today solely riding the coattails of Ms. Bushman, who has admittedly done some work.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Ms. Price, as promised, I'll give you a few minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I will also go ahead and briefly address the Hawley factors. I think that, but I first want to remind the court that Chapter 161.001 of the Family Code says that the court may order termination of the parent-child relationship with the findings, not that it has to, not that it must, not that it's required. And so when we then look at the Holly factors, because again, I think the addiction is established. So what is in the children's best interest? And ultimately, these are children who are nonverbal. And the testimony was that they are very bonded to Miss Bushman, and also that they are bonded to Mr. and Mrs. Ford, which we would expect and want from foster parents. And so I think that at best, that comes in evenly, but it's not clear and convincing evidence of termination. The emotional and physical needs of the child now and in the future, the children's needs are well established by the evidence in this case. But at the end of the day, the evidence did indicate that Miss Bushman got them with a provider, got Jameson the swallow study, was in the process of getting them the speech language pathology set up. And so what that comes down to is that we don't like how quickly she did it, or the way that she did it, or that she didn't think to require that the medical professional meet with the other medical professional or get the records. But what's not clear is to what extent she even had the opportunity to go to any of these medical appointments. She is criticized for not doing so, but there was no evidence that she was able to, or that there were orders for her to, or that there was cooperation with her to do so, or that there was advocacy for her to be able to do so. And so I believe that at the end of the day, that the emotional and physical needs of the child now and in the future do not raise to the level of termination being in their best interest. The emotional and physical danger to the children now and in the future, I think, also is addressed by what the department is asking for, which is a transition for the court to be able to monitor this and ensure that they are not in emotional and physical danger during this monitored return, which again does not raise the level that termination is in their best interest. The parental abilities of the individual seeking custody, of course, we are going to expect and see that the Ford's parenting abilities are superior, because that's what we expect from foster parents. In fact, it's required for them to be licensed in the first place. But the evidence that's been brought before this court about Ms. Bushman's disbelief of the severity of the children's needs, her belief that there was maybe some exaggeration of those needs to make her look bad, that is exactly what we would expect from a parent who is under the kind of microscope that Ms. Bushman has been under. That we would expect that she would feel those kinds of things. But despite her feelings, she still went and took them to obtain the treatment and the services that they need. And so I think that leans in favor of her retaining her parental rights. She has absolutely taken advantage of all of the services and programs available to her. The evidence to that point has been overwhelming from all of even the treatment providers who ultimately had her leave the facility, said that they continue to have interactions with her. Her plans, I don't believe, were vague. She knew which daycare she had them in the past. She knows which doctor she had them with in the past. And she indicated that she would have the time to be able to get those services set up again. She has the housing, she has the furniture, she has her own place set up to be able to begin immediately meeting their needs. And for the stability factor, Your Honor, yes, she has been in this place for 6 months. And for somebody who has had the history of addiction that she has had, this time she made the changes that were necessary. This time was different than the other times. And the evidence of that was clear and overwhelming throughout the case. And I don't believe that factor supports termination. And as far as any excuse for the acts or omissions, Ms. Bushman admitted to her use during this case. She admitted to the rough beginnings that she had and the history that she's had. And I don't think she was seeking to minimize or excuse those. I think that she instead was trying to own up to that part of her history, which we cannot erase. But Your Honor, at this point, I believe that the evidence does not meet the clear and convincing requirement that it's in the children's best rights to terminate parental rights in this case. And we do ask that the court issue or order the transitional monitor to return. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Price. We will be in recess until 3 o'clock. I'll come back at 3 o'clock and give my ruling. See you at 3. Court's in recess. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to give my ruling, and during the ruling, the only person that should be talking is me. And I'll set aside time after my ruling to make any clarifying orders that are necessary. This is a difficult case. I'm glad it came to me because as difficult as it is and as much pressure as it puts upon a judge, I know that I'm sitting here making a ruling after considering all of the evidence and operating under the established law, the case law, and the evidence that you all have presented here, which I want to commend all the attorneys for their excellent advocacy for their clients in this case. As most of you here know, the best interest of the children is the primary consideration of the court. There is, as Ms. Pearsall pointed out, legislation and public policy geared towards reunification with biological family. And this court, as several of you have been a part of, has returned many children home. And I acknowledge Ms. Bushman's efforts throughout the course of this case to maintain her sobriety and to better her life. And I commend you on that and want you to continue to do that because it can only get better from there as far as your sobriety goes. There were several arguments made that alluded to maybe other cases or other situations. And I want to make sure that this court has made this decision based on the fact that the facts and circumstances of this particular case are not like any other case where children are either returned home or not returned home. It's a unique and complicated case, as which most of these cases often are when we get to this point in procedure. When we get to the point of final trial, things are complicated. The Holly factors were discussed, and that includes a look at the needs of the children, not only now, but also in the future, and then the emotional and physical danger of the parents now and in the future, and then also the abilities of the parents we have here and the parents who are seeking custody. The court's standard here is unequivocally not what's in the best interest of any parents or any person seeking custody. It is about the best interest of children. This case is already in an extension, and there's been a lot of discussion about that throughout the course of this trial. The court finds that returning the children to Ms. Bushman would not be in the best interest of the children, as it would cause a significant impairment to the physical health or emotional development of the children. Court finds that the non-parent interveners have shown by a preponderance of the evidence several factors which I'm going to outline here in my ruling. Court finds that these children need permanency, and although the court has the option to order a monitored return, as has been requested, court declines to do so because the court finds that the mother already had one failed monitored return. And although Ms. Price made a very good argument to the perils of parenting, court finds that Ms. Bushman is still not reacting to the children's medical needs appropriately after over a year of help and support. Court finds that a speech therapist testified as to the needs of the children now, going into great detail in her testimony that the children need a swallow study every 6 months and still need thickener. Court is not convinced, nor does the court find Ms. Bushman or Mr. Martin credible that Ms. Bushman will appropriately address those issues in the future without constant supervision. That's not possible. Ms. Pearsall argued that if a parent gets it together, they should get their kids back. Court finds through Ms. Bushman's pattern of behavior, including during these proceedings, that although Ms. Bushman might have logistically gotten some things together, she has not convinced this court that she can provide for the needs of the children now and in the future. Court finds that she has completed services on her family plan of service, but she has not met the goal of the service plan of being able to meet the needs of the children. Court finds that she was not able to stop vaping, and she was smoking for a certain point of time. Court finds that she was not able to maintain a safe and stable household while the children were in her care. They were removed from her care, not once, but twice during the life of this case. And the court finds that even after, long after inpatient drug treatment, she still had a positive drug result for methamphetamine. Court finds that this case was initiated due to methamphetamine use and neglect. Court finds that Ms. Bushman has not only minimized the health issues throughout the case, but her very behaviors and reactions, including her own testimony in this trial, was that she believed everyone else was making a bigger deal about the medical concerns than was necessary. She reacted to Ms. Swallow's closing argument in a manner that I could only infer to this minute was that the children's health issues to her are not as severe as all of the professionals and the experts testified. This is of great concern to the court for the future safety and needs of the children now, again, and in the future. That's a best interest factor that I cannot ignore. No length of stability in an apartment or a job can overcome such a startling fact. The court observed Ms. Bushman nodding her head when it was mentioned that the breathing treatments were causing the children to have problems, which is further evidence to the court that she does not take the diagnoses of the children by medical professionals and therapists seriously. that is of great concern to the court regarding her ability to parent in the future when there's no supervision on her care or the physical needs of the children. The court finds that Ms. Bushman endangered the children, and then throughout the course of this case has shown through her specific acts and omissions that she continued smoking and vaping during the case despite the knowledge of the children having chronic lung disease. And despite that knowledge, she has minimized their medical diagnoses and conditions. She did not seek intensive and thorough medical intervention during her monitored return. She went to one doctor's visit. She made the decision after that one doctor's visit to take the children, who it's been testified to and is not in dispute, are silent aspirators, off their thickener based on that one physician's examination. Despite her being made well aware throughout the course of this case that they needed speech therapy and swallow studies to make sure they were getting adequate treatment for their condition. Court finds that the children are bonded to the foster parents and have a safe, stable, appropriate placement that meets their needs. The court finds that the court-appointed special advocate has the same concerns after making approximately 10 visits and observing the mother with the children. The court-appointed special advocate testified that there's a pattern in the mother's behavior of failing to put the children's needs before her own. Court finds that the court-appointed special advocate had concerns about Ms. Bushman's long-term ability to care for the children, and she pointed out that sobriety doesn't always equal a safe and stable home. The court finds that the disparity of income between the mother, Ms. Bushman, or the father, Mr. Martin, and the foster parents has absolutely no bearing on this decision. In that regard, the court has only considered the ability to provide the children with a safe, stable, drug-free home that can meet their needs based on the evidence presented. The court finds by clear and convincing evidence that the department and Belong made reasonable efforts to return the children to the parent before the commencement of a trial on the merits. And despite those reasonable efforts, a continuing danger remains in the home that prevents the return of the child to the parent. That continuing danger be what I just laid out in my previous findings. Court specifically finds, we just lost somebody. Who did we leave? Who did we lose? Was it Mr. Martin?
Yes.
All right, well, we'll see if we can get him back, but I'm going to keep going. Court specifically finds that those reasonable efforts include returning the children to the parent and attempting to avoid a removal by utilizing a safety plan and supervision resources, developing a family plan of service narrowly tailored to address the concerns that brought the children into the care of department and Belong, attempting a monitored return to the mother in this case that failed based on the specific acts and omissions of the mother, and requesting the court to extend the case to allow the mother an additional monitored return, which the court has denied as stated in the court's findings and rulings in this final order. The court finds that the interveners have proved by clear and convincing evidence that both parents, Tracy Bushman and Corey Martin, have, pursuant to Chapter 161.001 B1, have knowingly placed or knowingly allowed the children to remain in conditions or surroundings which endanger the physical or emotional well-being of the children, engaged in conduct or knowingly placed the children with persons who engaged in conduct which endangered the physical or emotional well-being of the children, failed to support the children in accordance with the parent's ability during a period of 1 year ending within 6 months of the date of the filing of the petition. For the mother, for both parents, been the cause of the child being addicted to alcohol or a controlled substance other than a controlled substance legally obtained by prescription. That's for both parents. And then for the father, the court will additionally find that Mr. Martin constructively abandoned the child who has been in the permanent or temporary management conservatorship of the Department of Family Protective Services for not less than 6 months, and the department has made reasonable efforts to return the child to the parent. The parent is not regularly visited or maintained significant contact with the child, and the parent has demonstrated an inability to provide the child with a safe environment. And Mr. Martin also failed to comply with the provisions of a court order that specifically established the actions necessary for the parent to obtain the return of the child who has been in the permanent or temporary managing conservatorship of the Department of Family Protective Services for not less than 9 months as a result of the child's removal from the parent under Chapter 262 for the abuse or neglect of the child. Additionally, for the mother, court finds that the interveners have proved by clear and convincing evidence, pursuant to Chapter 161.001B, that under P, she used a controlled substance as defined by Chapter 481 Health and Safety Code in a manner that endangered the health or the safety of the child and after completion of a court-ordered substance abuse treatment program, continue to abuse a controlled substance. For the purposes of the record, the statute provisions for the father are 161.001 B1D, E, F, N, and O. And for the mother, there are 161.001 B1D, E, F, P, and R. Court further finds that these terminations of a parent's parental rights pursuant to these provisions of the statute proved by clear and convincing evidence are in the best interest of the children, and it's in the best interest to terminate the parental rights of both parents. The attorneys for the parents, Ms. Savage and Ms. Pearsall, are dismissed. Court finds that they have satisfactorily completed their duties. The attorney ad litem, Ms. Harris, and CASA advocate are maintained in their respective appointments or relationships to court. We'll have a permanency review after final order October the 8th, 2024 at 10 a.m. October 8th, 2024 at 10 a.m. Court finds that placement of the children with the foster parents is safe, appropriate, meeting their needs, and in their best interest to continue. I can provide my docket notes if you need them to draft the order. At this time, are there any clarifying questions?
Judge, I would just request that the children not be moved absent court order.
So ordered.
Thank you.
The court's desire that the department prepare the final order.
I think since Ms. Swallow's clients were seeking termination, they should prepare the termination order, but I want it circulated. I want everybody to sign it. I want everybody to make sure it's right. Anything else? Ms. Swallow, have I failed to address anything?
No, Judge, thank you.
All right, this has been a long trial. It's been multiple settings. I want to thank you all for your time and your service. The only thing I can say to Ms. Bushman is that these decisions are never easy for me. They're extremely difficult. These are the days that I dread, but this is the job that I'm paid to do. And so I'm doing it. And I wish you good luck. And thank you all for your time and your service. I'll see you on October the 8th. Nothing further, all parties are excused. Thank you.